his heirs and successors according to law. So help me God.
It's happened before, but it is nonetheless still rather extraordinary that somebody who was only elected or officially sworn in as an MP less than 24 hours ago, in 3 weeks' time, is going to be running the country.
Yes, I think it is rather extraordinary. I think the issue isn't whether someone like that should automatically have to hold a general election. If Andy Burnham wants to introduce major changes to our constitution, he's talked about overhauling the House of Lords. He's also talked about overhauling our electoral system, bringing in some form of PR. I think if he wants to do any of those things, he needs a mandate from the public to do them. To try and do them without calling an election, I think, would be a constitutional outrage.
I've got an interesting tweet. There's always a tweet, Julia.
Yep.
If I can just read this out to you from Andy Burnham 3 years ago. We need to start demanding a general election at the end of this Tory leadership election. Well, well, well. That was Andy Burnham actually 4 years ago in 2022. So we're saying stick by your word, be consistent, Andy, and when you're Prime Minister, call a general election.
The battle is really on, though, for number 11. Who's going to be the Chancellor? Ed Miliband, don't forget, has played an integral key role in this coup, and it is a coup because no one apart from 25,000 good people of Makerfield have voted for this guy. Yeah. So he's played a pretty integral role in undermining Keir Starmer. Keir Starmer and Ed Miliband aren't really speaking. He's going to want a big reward. But, he is, probably the most left-wing person in the government, and he will spook the markets.
Lou Hay, I mean, the reality is, look, she served her time. She was cast out of government. The reality is, as you said, she has been central to his campaign. She was central to his campaign in Makerfield. More broadly, she's been central to his campaign to enter Downing Street. He owes her, and she will definitely get a role. I'm not.
What do you say to the people that have texted me in their droves this morning? This is a really corny sentence, but it's true. That lawbreakers can't be lawmakers, Dan?
Yeah, I mean, but the reality is she's going to get a job. So the answer is yes, they can.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Talk breakfast, and breaking this morning, incoming Prime Minister Andy Burnham hints at tax rises as he rules out crude welfare cuts. So can Andy Burnham be trusted with the British economy? Can Britain afford Burnhamism? Meanwhile, Number 10 are urged to change the law to enable the deportation of the key ringleader in the Rochdale grooming gang. This as vigilantes take to the streets in anger. Who could blame them? Meanwhile, Henry Novak's killer applies to have his murder conviction quashed and his sentence reduced. Is British justice becoming a joke? Meanwhile, Sir Keir Starmer's former right-hand man, Morgan McSweeney, says the true bit out loud, admitting Labour failed to prepare for power. Plus, the popularity of the leader of the Green Party, Captain Cleavage himself, Zach Polanski, has plummeted. So has the threat of the Greens gone away? And can Nigel Farage shake off allegations of sleaze? Are you concerned about this £5 million donation? Are you concerned about the 5 properties? Does any of that matter if he brings down inflation, gets the economy growing, stops the boats, tackles legal immigration, gets rid of wokery in our public institutions? Does anyone care? What matters to you? Let me know your thoughts. 0344 499 1000. Do the sleaze allegations around Nigel Farage bother you? Are they important? Do they matter? And what about Andy Burnham? Can he be trusted with the British economy? Can Britain afford Burnhamism? Well, it's all about your opinions. My phone number is 0344 499 1000. Damien is taking your calls this morning, and Solipe as well. Text the word talk in your message to 87222, or leave us a voice note. You're busy, it's Friday morning, lots going on, getting ready for work, of course, getting the kids dressed and fed before they go off to school. Perhaps you're in the middle of a night shift, at the tail end of a 12-hour shift, whatever you're up to, we've got your back. We are here for you. Can Britain afford Burnhamism? 0344 499 1000. You can hear us on the radio, DAB Plus in app and online. You can also watch the show. The brilliant Nahar is directing our TV output. Head to YouTube, search Talking Up We Pop. The brilliant Christian Mitchell is our executive producer. Sam's pressing the buttons. A big show to come. Let's talk. And it's not all bad news, by the way. We're not just obviously going to focus on the bankrupt economy that we currently have, which will be worse under Andy Burnham. Let's not worry about the boats, which are upwards of 1,000 people a day. We have some good news for you. Victory for England fans, as all pubs are told they can open until 5 a.m. for early hours World Cup clash with Mexico. A victory for the Sun newspaper, a victory for talk, a victory for common sense. Yes, folks, you can watch England absolutely smash Mexico with a cold beer at the same time. Well done, the Sun. See, it's not all bad news. So much to get through. Folks, can Britain afford Burnhamism? 0344 499 1000. Let's talk. And we will kick off with the front pages, and it stays in the spirit of that great news about being able to have a pint and watch the game at 1 a.m. Daily Mirror, World Cup pubs boost. Mexican rave, great headline. Pubs can stay open until 5 a.m. to let fans watch England's World Cup clash with Mexico. The match kicks off at 1 a.m. our time on Monday. And the Prime Minister, Keir Starmer, said football might be coming home, but we're making sure our fans don't have to. This is fantastic news. I think it's about time that the state, that the government treated us like grown-ups. I don't understand why pubs can't be open 24-hour a day. Let the market decide. If someone wants to have a pint at 3 in the morning, as long as they don't break the law and start smashing the place up because they've had too many or cause trouble on their way home, I think it's perfectly sensible to liberalise our licensing laws. It's absurd that in some of our great cities, central London, central Manchester, Glasgow, you can't get a pint after midnight in many of these venues. We need to sort it out. It would be very good for the economy. It would be good for hospitality. And here's the point. People work in different ways now. A lot of people work from home. They can have a bit of a boozy session on a Wednesday night. Lots of people work night shifts and then you want a pint early in the morning. Whatever it is, can we please liberalise our licensing laws? And let's use the World Cup as the perfect excuse to do just that. The iPaper, Labour failed to prepare for power before winning their landslide, admits McSweeney. Keir Starmer's closest advisor explains that the party did not properly prepare to govern the UK, offering frank insights from inside Number 10 about why the new administration ran aground. PM's ex-chief of staff, Morgan McSweeney, says Labour didn't prepare enough to enable them to deliver on their promises, reform the British state and show real rapid change for voters. Well, I beg to differ. Far be it from me to challenge the intellectual worldview of Morgan McSweeney. The problem you've got, and it's why Burnham is not going to fix anything, which is that they're wedded to a set of failed ideas. They think you can tax your way to prosperity. And in many ways, I'm terrified at the idea that Starmer might have been more prepared, because what he would have been more prepared for is higher taxes, more borrowing, the continuation, the perpetuation of the cult of welfarism. It's something the country can ill afford. It's the policies that are wrong. I mean, we can talk all day long about how robotic Keir Starmer is and was as PM. He's Britain's first AI-generated premier. The guy is a hologram, isn't he? He's completely inauthentic. He is robotic. He makes a Dalek look cuddly and human. But all of that's cosmetic. The issue is the policies. And what have we got? The most expensive energy in the developed world, the highest taxes since the Second World War. And I was hosting an event in Bristol last week, and I had an entrepreneur come up to me, and he said because of the national insurance tax raid, he has stopped hiring people. He has paused hiring, and he wants to bring young people into the business. He wants to give them an opportunity. He sees his company as a public good, and yet he's had to pause hiring people because of Rachel's tax raid. We've got venerated private schools that have been around for 100 years closing down. 10,000 kids have already left the private sector. There isn't a single new school teacher as a result of the VAT tax raid on private schools. The farmers are still struggling. And of course, the economy is the worst aspect of this. And Burnham saying to an alternative media outlet in the last 24 hours that he doesn't want crude spending cuts. Well, that's exactly what the country needs, is crude spending cuts. Because I can assure you, if, as the incoming Prime Minister, by the way, that no one voted for, if he doesn't inflict crude spending cuts, then in 2 or 3 years' time, we will have a Greece moment, there will be an economic crash, and it will be accountants and technocrats that will be delivering the crude cuts. That's what happened in Greece. Every department in Greece, 20% cuts, bang, that's it. It was slash and burn. So either the politicians are brave enough to do it, and if not, then accountants will do it in a few years' time, which, let me assure you, will be far more painful. Daily Express, Princess Catherine smashes it at SW19. Princess of Wales, she's on a roll, isn't she? Having recovered from cancer and returned to public life on her own terms. Meanwhile, she goes to Italy with a fantastic trip there. She spreads her message about the importance of nature for the well-being and health of children and for the rest of us. And there she is at Wimbledon. She's also done that massive challenge. She went up a mountain, didn't she? 3 peaks. So amazing. Congratulations to Princess Catherine, who's on a hot streak at the moment. Kick out rape gang monster now. I mean, this is another example of broken Britain, isn't it? This is a migrant that's come to the UK, admittedly when he was young. I don't care. He wasn't born in this country. And he's protected by laws from the 1970s that were well-intentioned in regard to the Windrush generation. But essentially, this vile, sick criminal cannot be deported, but he's released from prison, therefore a threat to the community. And the messaging that he walks free, how will his victims feel about the fact that he walks free and about the fact that he cannot be removed from this country? If you are somebody that is an immigrant into the UK and you have committed a serious crime, I want you out, and I will happily pay higher taxes to have you shipped out of this country. And I don't care if you're in no man's land, like that awful Shamima Bayboom character. He can just go to a dusty camp in Syria for all I care for the rest of his life. We can do a deal. There'll be some country that will take him. We'll write a cheque, 10 grand, take this man off our hands so we never have to see him again. The Sun newspaper, tequila sunrise. England fans' victory. Pubs can stay open till 5 a.m. for the game. PM steps in ahead of clash with Mexico. England fans can party in the pub until dawn for Monday's Mexico game after closing time was extended until 5 a.m. A massive victory for the Sun newspaper. So well done to my colleagues downstairs. Let's take a listen to the Prime Minister announcing the good news.
We're making sure that pubs can stay open on Monday morning, early on Monday morning, for the England game. So I know lots of people are making their plans. If you're planning to watch it in the pub, that is great, and it's really good for pubs as well. So come on, England.
Fantastic. Fantastic stuff. Well done to the Prime Minister and well done to the Sun newspaper, because what we've got to do, folks, we need, don't we, absolutely desperately, this World Cup, because there's so much doom and gloom out there, and I think England can bring it home. I'm not a football expert, let me tell you. That's apparent from the moment I open my mouth in regard to the subject. But I look at Harry Kane, I think he's got charisma, and I think that there's a bit of a team spirit there. I think Tuchel knows what he's doing. He's less woke than the last guy. What was he called? Sir something or other. I mean, not a fan. What was he called? Gary Neville? Gareth Southgate. What a drip. I know he gets to the final. We didn't win. He was rubbish at penalties when he was a player, wasn't he? I don't like him. When he was England manager, he talked about how all the players know their responsibilities in society and we've got to make the world a better place. No, you don't. The England football team don't have to make the world a better place. They don't have to know their responsibilities. They have to win football matches. They have to kick the ball in the back of the net and get trophies. I actually don't care about their social responsibilities. They can do, Christian, whatever they like in a Holiday Inn Express after the game with a bunch of women who are not their wife. I couldn't care less. Knock yourself out, lads, as long as you're not breaking the law, because it's coming home. There was nothing worse than woke Gareth Southgate. And by the way, why is he a knight? He's won nothing. This guy has won nothing. And he becomes Sir Gareth Southgate because we were in a final that we didn't win. If you think about the people that have held the title Sir, you've got Sir Winston Churchill, who saved the free world, right? That's what you get. That's what you get. When you save the free world and defeat fascism, you become a Sir, right? McCartney sold 1 billion records, changed the world culturally. That's what a Sir looks like. James Dyson, Britain's Steve Jobs, incredible entrepreneur and genius. That is what a Sir looks like. Elton John, 400 million records, global icon. That's what a Sir looks like, not someone that came second in a football match. England's big all-nighter. The pubs will be open until 5 a.m. on Monday as nation prepares for the working week with next to no sleep. And Nicola Sturgeon is starting early. First Minister, former SNP leader Nicola Sturgeon, enjoys a long lunch in London. It's funny, isn't it? She wants to break up the United Kingdom. The minute she ceases to be First Minister, bang, she's down south. And the reason why is because we've got a better standard of living here in England. Isn't it ironic? The reason why England is better run than Scotland. They've got a worse health service, worse academic outcomes at school, the highest drug deaths in Europe, massive problem with alcoholism, which, by the way, she appears to be participating in. What a traitor she is to her own people. I mean, seriously, the snake oil of Scottish nationalism. Do me a favour. Daily Star. England versus Mexico. Extra time. Calls for bank holiday as pubs to open until 5 a.m. on Monday. Daily Telegraph, change law to kick out rapist number 10 told, and NHS shopping vouchers for walking 20 minutes a day. Discounts and shopping vouchers will be given to people who walk 20 minutes a day under an NHS-backed plan to get Britain moving. Millions will be urged to meet daily walking targets in a campaign led by Sir Brendan Foster, the former Olympic medalist, and Sir Keith Mills, the Air Miles inventor and London Olympics supremo. It's not a bad idea, is it? I think actually for the state to encourage a healthy lifestyle is not the worst thing. Don't tell us what to do, but certainly incentivising is not a problem. Putin preparing Polish incursion to challenge NATO's response. If that doesn't remind you or tell you that we need defence spending, nothing will. Guardian, spending cuts to fund defence plans will cost 10,000 UK jobs. And pubs open till 5 a.m. for England's next match. Last but not least, the newspaper of record of this country, The Times, extra £750 million for anti-drone measures to protect British bases. And Burnham manifesto allows some taxes to rise. Well, that's our big discussion today. Can Britain afford Burnhamism? It is 6:18, more front pages and my star guest next.
That was Andy Burnham just going through there on his way to the palaces of Westminster to be sworn in as an MP and, of course, on his route to number 10.
I swear by Almighty God that I will be faithful and bear true allegiance to His Majesty King Charles, his heirs and successors, according to law. So help me God.
There was two things on that manifesto. One was a picture of Keir Starmer and the word change. Well, promise made and promise delivered in that sense.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Can the leader of Reform UK, Nigel Farage, shake off allegations of sleaze? Are you concerned about this £5 million donation before he became the leader of Reform UK? Are you concerned about the 5 houses? Sean says, good morning, Mark. Farage is not worse than the rest of them, so it's a no from me. If he delivers half of what he says, it will be forgotten. And as for the ... of the North, God help us, says Sean. Hi, Mark. Nigel is a businessman. He wants to get people doing the same as him, making money, becoming employers. I will vote Reform any day. Thank you for that. And Michael, this is on the possible deportation of one of the ringleaders of the Rochdale grooming gangs. And Michael says Starmer can fast-track legislation to keep pubs open for the football, but not to deport paedophiles. Live in the studio, I'm delighted to welcome broadcaster and political commentator, the wonderful, the one and only Benedict Spence. Good morning, Benedict.
Good morning.
Very good to see you. Lots to go at today. Can we start with some good news? Victory for England fans. They can have a pint on Monday night. The pubs will stay open until 5. An outbreak of common sense.
Very exciting for all involved. Now what will happen is we'll lose. Having actually given us something nice, fate will take it away with the other hand, and so you'll be able to drown your sorrows until 5 a.m. It's one of those funny things, isn't it? Because, of course, initially the information that came out was, no, in fact, you would not be able to, and that it would require something very difficult and complex to allow people to stay out and the pubs to stay out. And it turns out, actually, no, where there's a will, there is, in fact, a way, because it's the government and they can do whatever they want. So, finally, some common sense. It's a good thing. Still, though, you're going to have to stay up very late if you want to watch it, so that's entirely within your gift to do.
Well, that's right. I might be burning the midnight oil. Meanwhile, incoming Prime Minister-elect, if you like, Andy Burnham, thinks we should have a bank holiday. Take a listen to this.
England wins, bank holiday. Now, can I say, Andrew, we only beat... Well, we struggled, let's say. And I've full respect to the... Congo, Democratic Republic of Congo, but I think we might be getting ahead of ourselves. There's a very big game coming up on Sunday. We do have to live in hope. I think, it might be a bit premature to be speculating.
But if it happened, you couldn't turn it down. Well, in all honesty,
it would be a fantastic moment, wouldn't it? And we can hope and pray that it comes off. But as I say, let's not. I'm an Evertonian. I do not ever bank anything when it comes to football. I don't do it with England either. I think they've got a bit of improvement to do before we can start seriously dreaming of it coming home.
That be true. Andy Burnham.
I'm already sick of Andy Burnham. I'm a regular guy. Call me Andy. Man at M&S. A poor man's Zelensky. Do me a favour. I'm sorry. I'm not buying this Burnham shtick. And by the way, what an embarrassing joke Andrew Marr is. What an embarrassment. Have you ever seen a more obsequious interview in your life? They were like just a couple of chums down the pub, weren't they? This is a broadcaster of apparently national significance in Andrew Marr. A man that, when he was at the BBC, was apparently incredibly neutral and harsh on every politician. And there they are, like best buddies, like bosom buddies. This is the same Andrew Marr that went on Question Time, having stepped down as one of the faces of BBC News and Current Affairs. And when Labour had won, he said you can almost sense a calmness in the country. The grown-ups are back in the room. How's that working out for you? What a joke. We're going to get much more sense from Benedict Spence. I'm sorry to be so furious about all of these things. Can we talk about the economy? Because Andy Burnham has said the manifesto allows for some tax rises to happen. Be afraid, be very afraid. He also doesn't want crude cuts to welfare. Well, I do.
Yeah, this is the thing, actually. The key word is some taxes to rise. And what you can take from that is that he would prefer it to be more taxes to rise, but he's got only a little bit of wiggle room. Unless, of course, he calls a general election and tries to get his own sort of terms, so to speak, from the electorate. The reality is all of us working-age people and all of your listeners, working people, understand the amount of pressure that is being put on working people from the system right now, from the government right now, in order to fund all sorts of things. And this has always been the problem, actually. People don't necessarily mind high taxes if they can see their money working.
Of course.
What we've had, though, with this government and successive governments, taxes going up and standards not just not improving, not staying the same, actively decreasing, getting worse.
Bingo.
So when you hear Labour politicians talking about who next can we tax, where is the next tranche of super rich people that we're told apparently are everywhere, the super rich control everything and they're everywhere and they're fabulously wealthy.
Well, they are
When
everywhere. They're in Singapore, Paris and New York, but they used to be in London.
Yeah, they used to
now
be
they've gone.
when this was the place to be, and now it's not, partly because of people like this. And he sat there going, well, there will be some tax rises, I can find some tax rises. And genuinely, I think most of us are sat here going, what else is it that we are chronically under-taxed on that you're possibly going to find? You know, what little nugget has Rachel Reeves missed up until this moment? I'm really curious to know what it is that he feels is getting off lightly at the moment, because it feels like everybody is being absolutely hounded right now.
You've nailed it, and you've got in very early with the mic drop this morning, Benedict, because we, my viewers and listeners, and the British public, we are customers. Because when you pay your taxes, you are purchasing a service, are you not?
Yeah.
Is that not what the payment of taxation is? You lend your hard-earned money to the Treasury, to the Exchequer, and hopefully what they'll do is secure the border and, you know, have defence and police officers and school teachers and fix the potholes. None of that's happening. And as you say, with the highest tax burden since the Second World War, if our hospitals were like five-star hotels, and you could get a GP appointment at the drop of a hat, if there was a copper on every street corner, if we had well-resourced schools that were sending kids off to uni with A star, A star, A star, then no problem. But that's not where we are.
No. The whole thing is just disintegrating. And, you know, amidst all of that, it's not even that you've got a government that's being honest with people about what's going wrong and how it's going wrong. Because actually we're constantly being told that there are certain problems that need to be addressed, that we're all kind of sat here going, no, those aren't the problems. We all know what the issues are around things like immigration. But actually we've still got a government that insists that that's not the problem. Amongst other things, of course, you then got energy, which everybody knows, really basic thing. Humans in the cave discovered how to harness fire, and things kind of got good from there. That's where it started to exponentially grow and improve. And yet our government is still sat here going, energy, it's a bit of a dirty thing. It's not something actually we like. We need to transition, as we all know, to net zero. And it doesn't matter that the rest of the world isn't doing this, and that it's colossally expensive and inefficient, and that it leads to ripping up great swathes of the countryside for solar panels that then, overheat and you can't use, or wind farms that kill all the bird life and actually don't have a very long shelf life as it is anyway. No, we still need to dive down this route. And to hell with the fact that the rest of the world isn't doing the same thing. So actually, there is no negligible impact on the temperature in the UK. There's no noticeable impact on the temperature in the UK because everybody else continues to burn fuels. It's just us. We have to impoverish ourselves.
Let's take a listen to Andy Burnham, Prime Minister, if elect, if I can call him that. We're going to have a listen to his remarks about tax. My question to you this morning is a very simple one, which is, can Britain afford Burnhamism? He's saying that we shouldn't have crude cuts to welfare. Well, we should. I think crude is exactly the word, but let's take a listen to Big Andy.
There is some room within that manifesto for movement on tax. So if you take business rates, for instance, I believe there is a case for higher business rates on warehouses and the major developments we see on the outskirts of our cities, so that we can cut business rates for pubs, and I've proposed a 20% cut, and lift some high street businesses out of business rates altogether. Overall, people can be certain of me, of one thing of me. Read some of the commentary. I am not indisciplined when it comes to the public finances. I've run Greater Manchester, the fastest growing city region in the country, for a decade, and you can't make it the fastest growing city region in the country, Andrew, without strong business confidence. I actually get frustrated at some of the narrative that people try to put around about me. My record says otherwise.
Benedict Spence, can Britain afford Burnhamism?
No. But, you know, we're going to get it either way. That's the tricky thing. We can sort of sit here and talk about the benefits or the negatives of it. It's coming for us one way or another, and it's not going to be pretty. Honestly, I was sat in this studio with Peter Cardwell about a week ago, and he said he thought that Andy Burnham could end up being the Liz Truss of the left. Now, maybe not on the same timeline, but certainly short. It's going to be very painful. We've already seen that his, as you say, he's not actually the Prime Minister yet, but everybody understands that he is going to be the Prime Minister. And the polls do not appear to have shown a huge bounce. There was always that sort of suggestion that, don't worry, he's going to be the one, he's going to come in, he's going to sweep away all the cobwebs, and suddenly he'll be better at messaging, and everybody will get that sense of enthusiasm back. There has been a bounce, but it's not been a particularly large one. That's not going to improve. This is going to be as good as it gets. Maybe in the next couple of weeks you might see another 1 or 2 percentage points going up, but it's not going to get any higher. His ideas are not new. He's got nothing particularly incisive. Just sitting there and going, I'm going to move half of the number 10 operation up north. That doesn't actually do anything for GDP, doesn't do anything to improve
That's
law and order.
cosmetic.
Yeah, it's all of it with him is just vibes. And the worst thing is, it's vibes that are about 20, 30 years out of it. This whole, oh, I'm from Manchester and it's very cool. He's not from Manchester, for a start. Can we stop with this nonsense that he is representative of that city? He was elected, but he's from Aintree. Different thing. And the fact is, this kind of the shtick that he comes out with about being part of the cool
Everton season ticket holder, Dina Vega.
And it's
pass me the sick bag.
Yeah, and it's the whole thing trying to talk, you know, trying to portray himself as a particularly cool or with it individual. It's like watching your dad still trying to be cool, except it's not even your dad. He's in that older bracket now. It's gone beyond that. It is embarrassing to watch. Nobody actually wants a Prime Minister who sits there in a T-shirt and an ill-fitting jacket going, I'm just like you. What they want is competence. They didn't elect Keir Starmer, you know, because he was saying, I'm just like you. Nobody thought he was just like anybody else. What he promised was competence. It's partly why he is so hated now, because he couldn't even do that. He couldn't give you the basic function of government. What's Andy Burnham offering? He's not even offering competence. At no point is he coming out and saying, I'm just going to make sure that the fundamentals are done. He's coming out with, you know, oh, it's going to be levelling up everywhere, it's going to be hope, and, you know, he used an You'll Never Walk Alone quote line, I think, in his first speech, with hope in your heart, and you're kind of sat there going, can I just have some meat on the bone? Can we have something? Can we have some sign that you understand what this is? There's been nothing, apart from, let's move number 10 up north, and let's have a few more taxes where I can find them. Oh, revolutionary stuff, absolutely groundbreaking.
Well, too right. Let's take a listen to Andy Burnham inviting questions for Reddit, which is an online chat platform. Take a listen.
Hi everyone, I'm going to be doing a Reddit AMA here at 5 p.m. tomorrow, so send your questions in and I will look forward to answering them.
Oh, he's so modern, isn't he? So I'm going to use this platform here on Talk Breakfast to ask you to put your questions to Andy Burnham. What are your questions to the Prime Minister-elect? What questions do you have for the King of the North, who I believe is going to be a king-terrible Prime Minister? 0344 499 1000. What are your questions for Andy Burnham? Next up, Labour's crushingly embarrassing admission. 6:34, this is Talk Breakfast.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Helen in London has said, good morning, Mark. I'm sorry, but please cut the rubbish with the super rich leaving due to being taxed when it's the middle class being taxed out of existence. Sorry, but it's true. Farage will be no better. None of our political class are worth our time. Helen, thank you for that. I mean, this is the issue, is that you do have the super rich and the middle class and the working class all being clobbered. It's everyone, Helen, because about a month ago, maybe 6 weeks ago, I changed the tariff on my mobile phone contract, and I had a lady in Glasgow. She was working from home and she's in a call centre. And let's be clear, although it's a good job, she's not making big money. And she was telling me about how hard it was in her daily life because of the taxes. And I've got to tell you that I have no memory of someone at the bottom of the economic ladder talking about the taxes that they're now dealing with. And I think that is a real shift in the conversation. As the brilliant Winston Churchill said, you cannot tax your way to prosperity. Burnham reveals where number 10 North will be as PM in waiting rules out crude welfare cuts despite soaring benefits bill. Meanwhile, change law to kick out Rochdale rapist number 10 urged. Benedict Spence is a broadcaster and political commentator. Benedict's Labour is facing mounting pressure to change immigration laws immediately so that a child rapist freed from jail can be deported. Shabir Ahmed is 73, sentenced to more than 20 years in jail after being convicted of 30 child rape offences as part of the Rochdale grooming gang. We can't deport him because of laws in the 1970s to protect the Windrush generation. This has to be fixed.
I did see the way that the government framed this yesterday by putting it out going, well, these laws exist to protect people, amongst which were the Windrush generation, and that's why you have to...
So they're almost selling it.
And you're all kind of sat there when you read that going, that's all. Don't frame it that way. For the love of God, don't put it as a, well, you have to keep the child rapists because Windrush. Like, that's not a good enough excuse.
By the way, I'm more worried about child racists. I mean,
child racists especially. Roving gangs of child racists calling all sort of dated slurs all across the streets.
I mean, your average police officer, right? Are they? Would you think they'd be more concerned about a child racist?
Almost certainly.
Yeah.
Almost certainly.
That's what's going to get the blue lights going, isn't it?
Just sort of got a mental image now of using sort of very dated words for Italians. You know, young kids, sort of whose voices haven't broke, shouting them at you as you walk past some police officers chasing after them and ignoring a man getting stabbed. That's the sort of situation that you'd have. But okay. Child racists are a problem, but not as large of a problem as child rapists. And it is very important that we understand where the hyphen goes in both of these sets of examples. Obviously, nobody wants the child rapists to be here, especially if they are foreign-born. There have to be mechanisms for getting rid of them. The idea that they should be allowed to stay in this country after serving their sentence, and let's be clear, a lot of people are pretty unhappy that they stay here to serve a sentence in the first place. But if it's because, you know, they've given up their citizenship of another country or the other country won't take them, there have to be ways round that. And I'm sorry, the whole thing about the grooming gangs has now, I think, taken on such a hue, such a vast sort of position in the public consciousness.
Cast such a shadow over our country.
That this sort of, oh, well, we can't because of X, Y, Z, like, you're going to have to find a way. Somebody is going to have to find a way of drawing a line under this thing and coming up with an acceptable level of punishment for the people involved. Because there are, far too many of them. It's been going on for far too long. It was covered up by far too many people, and it's still ongoing. The number of assaults that we hear about on young people and women by foreign migrants, but the fact that we also still hear about grooming gangs, not just sort of random attacks, but actually coordinated efforts to abuse people. This can't be allowed to continue. It's clearly beyond simply a few bad apples if it continues to be a pattern like this. So when you've got the government turning around and going, oh, well, we couldn't possibly do this because of Windrush. Nobody cares about Windrush that much. Like, everybody's very happy that the Windrush generation came and did whatever they did. Great. Of course. All that sort of thing.
And they were served a great injustice back in the day.
Yeah, but using them as a shield to say, well, that's why we can't deport child rapists. Like, if that's not doing them a favour, do you think the Windrush generation is sat there going, thanks so much for dragging our name into this. That's exactly what we wanted.
It's a really good point.
But,
and it's woke bingo, isn't it?
Yeah,
you know,
it is.
The woke checkmate. But Windrush.
If you were to ask the average descendant of the Windrush generation, what would you do with a child rapist? I suspect it would be a lot more right-wing than the average person in the street. There is this strange idea that everybody who came to this country from the Caribbean, that they're all woke as well. Actually, no, if you ask them what their political views are, they tend to be pretty right-wing people, especially given the culture that they came from. And a lot of them wanted to buy into the culture of the UK. This is, of course, one of the great juxtapositions. So many people who came from, say, British East Africa or the Caribbean in that period, they came, at least in part, because they wanted to be British. They then have had their experiences effectively sort of weaponised against normal British people to say, what is Britishness? Does it matter? No, you should be able to tolerate anything and anybody who turns up and let them live their own life. And I think that that's a real insult to... Of course, this doesn't apply to all migrants of that generation. Lots of them also complained and wanted their own culture. But it's a real insult to all the migrants who come to this country because they wish to be British. Not they wish to make money or live off the state or anything like that, because they see our culture and our society and they think, I want to be part of that. They come here, they work hard, they learn the language, they obey the laws, and then they see other ethnic minority individuals who have rocked up and are swinging the lead and doing what they want, and those people, those migrants who have worked hard, they are used as the shield to exempt those people who do not wish to partake as to why it is that they shouldn't be forced to partake.
And it's ironic because there are millions of ethnic Brits who are patriotic, who love what the United Kingdom is supposed to stand for, who are not woke, and who believe in border control and who are furious about the boats, which is why it's going to be very confusing to the left when many hundreds of thousands, if not millions of those people, vote reform at the next election. Yeah. The woke brain is going to explode when they try to process it.
It's always why I thought...
People of colour voting for Nigel Farage, but he's a racist!
This is part of the reason why...
He's a child racist.
Yeah, this is he's not that young. I mean, it looks good for his age, but come on. But this is always
This will be awkward if you've just tuned in, by the way.
If Nigel's just tuned in, especially, he's going, what? Honestly, though, this is one of the reasons why, you know, in the great pantheon of things that the Conservatives massively messed up on, the fact that the Tories just effectively gave up on London so many times after Boris Johnson on the mayoralty.
It's true.
Actually, the number of ethnic... They gave up on London because they thought London is increasingly ethnic minority, majority, therefore we have no hope. You ask the average ethnic minority what their views are, they're probably further to the right than the average Tory MP.
And
the Tories just gave up.
Sean, what's-his-face?
Did a lot better than...
He did very well.
Yeah.
Sean Bailey, he ran Sadiq Khan pretty close last time.
Yeah, it came a lot better. It came a lot closer than anybody thought he would. And that's because the Tories just didn't understand the people who live in their own capital city.
Most definitely. Let's take a listen to a voice note from Sean on this issue of the ringleader of the Rochdale grooming gang who cannot be deported currently. Take a listen.
Morning, Mark. Sean from Grimsby here. We live in a country now where the government can change the law overnight to save British Steel, to keep the pubs open so we can watch the game. Yet for some reason they can't change the law overnight to deport a foreign paedophile who likes to rape little kids. So you have to ask why. And it's because the Labour government want him here. The Labour government think that it'll breach his human rights. If we deport him, this Labour government will always put the rights for foreign rapists above the people who he raped. Great show, mate.
Sean, thank you for that. Many of you are messaging in to say it's amazing how the government can change the rules, draw up a law that allows pubs to serve pints at 1 in the morning so we can watch England versus Mexico, but we can't change the law to deport a foreign rapist. Make it make sense. We've seen this with the Refugee Convention, with the Human Rights Act, with the ECHR. What this country needs is to dismantle the legal framework of our system so we can start again. We need an economic, legal and societal revolution. Will it come? Well, in time. Simple question this morning. Can Britain afford Burnhamism? 0344 499 1000. Coming up, more front pages. And Labour say the true bit out loud, that they did not have a plan for power. In other news, the Pope of the Catholic Church is a man of faith and bears relieve themselves in the woods. This is Talk Breakfast, 6:46, more to come.
breaking news this morning revealed that under the Terrorist Act, 242 people were arrested in the year to June of this year.
That's something you can indulge in as to all the people who aren't going to prison because, well, there's no prison spaces.
So this is a talk exclusive we've been looking at.
I said, you take these cuffs off me and speak to me like a human being rather than a common criminal.
You're just left wondering, does these people who lead us actually hate Britain?
Yeah.
Do they not love our country and everything that we've stood for?
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Is there a better example of broken Britain than our inability to deport foreign rapists? Let's take a voice note on that from Mark.
Good morning. Good morning, Mark. Good morning, crew. Why is it the UK government can change laws so we can all sit in a pub until 5 a.m. in the morning, drinking alcohol and watching football? They can do that, but they can't change the laws so we can deport a non-national paedophile that's just been released from one of our prisons and the British taxpayer has been paying for since 2012 to keep him locked up in a cell. He's been released and we can't even deport him. Why can't they change laws to do that? You know what I mean? It's ridiculous.
Ridiculous indeed. Maybe that's a question that we could put to Andy Burnham, Prime Minister in waiting. He's been on a rival network saying that he's taking questions on Reddit, which is an online chat platform. Well, what are your questions for Andy Burnham? And we'll send them over to his office. I don't know where the office is going to be. Is it Westminster? Is it Manchester? Is it Timbuktu? Who cares where he does the job? It's not that difficult, Andy Burnham. Lower taxes so we have economic growth. Stop the boats, tear up the ECHR, all the rest of it. And let's have a country that lives within its means. It isn't complicated. Scrap net zero. I'm all for an energy mix, but we can't afford this socialist experiment. Let's sort it out. If only I was Prime Minister. We can but dream. Or Benedict Spence, who joins me live in the studio. Your questions for Andy Burnham. Well, this from Amanda. Good morning, Mark. Andy Burnham, question. May God help us. For a start, how much is the ridiculous move of number 10 to the north and all that entails going to cost? Question for Andy from Mick. Can King Burnham please inform taxpayers of the extra security costs to have a duplicate number 10 in Manchester? Bill in Romsey. Hi, Mark. My question to Burnham. Will you put the British people first, or will your union bosses come first? And will illegal immigrants' rights be more important than ours? Louise is not pulling her punches. She's in Ipswich. She says, Mark, Andy Burnham is just Starmer in a tight T-shirt. Well, let's talk about Morgan McSweeney, who's the Prime Minister's former Chief of Staff and the man that exited number 10 because of his recommendation to the PM of appointing Peter Mandelson to UK ambassador to the US. Morgan McSweeney has admitted that he knew before entering number 10 that Labour had not done enough to prepare for government. Starmer's former Chief of Staff said that he realised before the election that the party had become consumed by the challenge of winning after so many expected it to lose. He told the BBC's Political Thinking with Nick Robinson podcast, I think that we didn't prepare enough for what kind of world we were going to be in. Benedict Spence in other news. The Pope has Catholic leanings, and we know where the bears go to the toilet.
This is the thing. We have to remember, actually, where Labour came from going into the last election, where they had been, and who had been leading them before Keir Starmer. I think, really, they were about one election cycle behind where they wanted to be when the Tories imploded. and made it inevitable that Labour would win the last general election. Yeah, because let's be clear here, McSweeney's sort of talking about, well, we weren't prepared for governing because we were so consumed by wanting to win, but they didn't have to do anything to win. I mean, I don't know if anybody remembers watching any of the hustings, for instance, you know, the debates between the leaders, or any of the mainstream papers' coverage of Labour going to the last election. There was not a lot of scrutiny placed on them, because actually what people wanted to do was give the Tories a kicking. That was the blood sport, that was what sold copy, that was what made people interested. So ultimately, you had a party that came in, had not been scrutinised very much. There were also cases, as you say, people like Andrew Marr, who frankly quite liked the idea of Labour getting in, regardless of what their policies were. So when McSweeney says that they weren't ready for government, I do believe that, because, and you know, this is me being a little bit charitable to Keir Starmer and people like Morgan McSweeney. I don't think they expected the Tories to set fire to their own mandate as quickly as they did. And to be fair, that might not have happened if it hadn't been for COVID and then lockdowns and then Boris Johnson flouting his own regulations that he subjected everybody else to. If that hadn't happened, I think that the timeline would have been very different and we might still be living under a Tory government. Of course, not entirely possible, but I think most people would sit there and go, at that time, at that moment in time, yeah, Boris Johnson looked pretty unassailable. So I do understand where McSweeney's coming from. Suddenly they went from a position of thinking, we've got time to rebuild the party, we're getting rid of the cranks on the left, we're sort of slowly filtering in decent people to be new backbenchers and get rid of the nutters. Oh, we don't have time anymore. There's an election coming down the road. We might actually win it. Oh, good Lord, look at the size of our majority. And my word, aren't some of these backbenchers nutters, because we still haven't had time to completely rebuild the thing. Now, does that mean that there's a world in which Starmer could have been a good leader? No. He was the man there to do the rebuild job. He's the manager who comes in. He's your Arne Slot, if you like. You've had Jurgen Klopp, it's been great. You then have to rebuild, and somebody else is going to take a bit of a rap. That was going to be Keir Starmer. He was never meant to be this sort of Titanic figure who was going to completely redesign Britain. And I think when McSweeney says we weren't prepared for the world that we ended up inherited, I think that that's a tacit admittance right there. They didn't quite understand what it was that was going to fall into their lap.
Most definitely, and I think that the whole project was led by a fraud and a charlatan in Keir Starmer. That's just my honest opinion. I don't think that he did have a plan for power. In that election campaign, all he said is, my father was a toolmaker, which, I'll be honest, is a statement of deafening fact. Let's take a listen to the Prime Minister, who, before the election, said that he was very prepared for government. Take a listen.
Prepared this party for government. We have prepared all of our departments for government. If we are privileged to come in to serve our country, it will be public service for me, as it always has been, not self-entitlement.
Self-service more like? Well, here's Morgan McSweeney admitting the opposite in just the last 24 hours with the BBC.
Once we started getting into 2022, 2023, it was about building the machine. But early in 2024, when we were preparing for the general election, when we were sitting down with Pat McFadden in windowless rooms, hour after hour, planning for day one, I did start to realise that we hadn't done enough to prepare for government, and then we got exposed for that, I think, early. Enough of analysis about how the state worked and how it needed to change.
This Morgan McSweeney character interests me, actually, because he's more articulate than Starmer is. He's more right-wing than Starmer. And he's more honest than Starmer. I think he'd have been a better Prime Minister, actually.
Well, he's more honest now that he's out of the job, I suppose. He feels that he can be. But, I mean, we all know what he's saying is true, though. We didn't need to wait for this revelation because, of course, when it became very clear that these people were not ready for the job that they've been running for was when Rachel Reeves turned around and said, ha-ha, there's a X many billion-pound black hole and it's growing and nobody knew that it was there. And most people kind of sat there going, no, you were telling us for a very long time that you were across the public finances, and we know that you were across the public finances because you've told us at great length that you've had access to them, which you do have as, you know, His Majesty's official opposition. So to then turn around and say, oh, actually, there's many more problems than we thought, and it's growing, and that's going to justify our tax rises, straight off the bat, within a couple of weeks, we knew that they were not ready, that they had lied.
Most definitely, and I think that is the headline story. What about this one? Henry Novak's killer applies to have murder conviction quashed and his sentence reduced. I mean, you do start to wonder whether our justice system is becoming a bit of a joke.
But, I mean, all criminals do that. Everybody in prison is innocent. they all insist that they're innocent. And, you know, it's very rare that you ever find the person that says, yeah, fair cop, I did it. That doesn't actually tend to be the case. Somebody who is, I think, as brazen as this, who was prepared to lie about the motivations of the murder, claim that his victim was, in fact, the villain, that he was racist, co-opted his family members into the lie as well. Why should we be surprised at all that such a person would turn around, having been convicted, and say, no, I didn't do it, nothing to do with me, Gov. Absolutely unfair, racist, you know, it may be manslaughter, who knows? But why should we be surprised at all? Our system does allow for appeals, and it's right that it does allow for appeals because every now and then there are mistakes. Andy Malkinson is perhaps the best example of that, right. And whenever you find your blood boiling because somebody dreadful has done something and you think the sentence should be harsher, there's always that example, which is that there are innocent people, honest working people who every now and then they get caught up in it as well. You need those mechanisms just in case. So it's right that there is the possibility to appeal, but let's be clear, most people appeal not because they are actually innocent, but because they're just trying to see what they can get away with.
You're listening to Talk Breakfast, and incoming Prime Minister Andy Burnham hints at tax rises as he rules out crude welfare cuts. So can Andy Burnham be trusted with the British economy? Can Britain afford Burnhamism? What do you think? 0344 499 1000. We've got a bid in to interview Andy Burnham, but in the absence of that, what are your questions for this man that's going to be our Prime Minister? 0344 499 1000. A very big hour to come. This is Talk Breakfast.
Some breaking news here. The Crowborough Army Training Camp could hold male asylum seekers all the way until 2030. Good. After the Home Office claimed it would only be for 12 months. Not much ambition involved in that, is there, in terms of solving the migrant crisis?
Absolutely, and the way that the Labour government gaslit the public when the migrants were first moved in there, saying, you know, you guys are absolutely being mad. Crowborough is a quiet, leafy town in East Sussex. These people, you can see, have been pushed to their absolute limit. They're not the types that you usually see protesting about this sort of thing. But that town has been absolutely desecrated.
You're ruining the country. Get Keir Starmer out. Look, England's flag. You're useless. Labour parties are useless.
I love our country. And one of the things about our country is good manners. Not very British.
What Labour advisor thought she wasn't going to be heckled at a petrol station in Leeds? Do these politicians actually ever get out and understand what it's like for real working-class people? I thought it was British to exercise a right to free speech. That's what Keith Stalin told Trump. That's what White Van Man was exercising yesterday to Richard III. Oh, yes, I remember. We're not really allowed our right to free speech in case we criticise the government.
You can't blame people so many decades away from you for the chaos that has been caused by Labour.
This is cheap politics, isn't it, Syrian?
Well, it's stupid politics. I mean, who raised national insurance on part-time workers? Labour. Who's been the stupid people that have wandered down the road and increased taxes on businesses and on individuals? Labour.
A lot of people get very frustrated, especially when the government says, oh, free school meals, you know, for every kid, not just the kids who really need them, free bus passes, free this, free that. None of it's free. It's subsidised and paid for by the taxpayer. And we're in this constant situation where the government's answer to everything is tax us a bit more, take more of our money, and then give some more of it away generously. It's our sodding money they're giving away.
Yeah, exactly. And it's either someone else's money today, another taxpayer, or even worse, it's the money from our...
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Rise and shine, top of the morning. Welcome to Talk Breakfast. Mark Dolan with you for a big 3 hours. And breaking this morning, incoming Prime Minister Andy Burnham hints at tax rises as he rules out crude welfare cuts. But isn't that exactly what we need? Isn't crude the word? Do you really want to work hard in your job, do overtime, pay your taxes so that other people can stay home and chow down Domino's pizza, mainline Diet Coke, watching loose women for hours on end? So our question this morning is a simple one. Can Andy Burnham be trusted with the British economy? Can Britain afford Burnhamism? This is a guy that doesn't want to be in hock to the bond markets. Well, they're the people who keep the lights on. Meanwhile, number 10 are urged to change the law to enable the deportation of the key ringleader in the Rochdale grooming gang. This as vigilantes take to the streets in anger. Meanwhile, Henry Novak's killer applies to have his murder conviction quashed and his sentence reduced. Is British justice turning into a joke? Meanwhile, Sir Keir Starmer's former right-hand man says the true bit out loud. His former Chief of Staff, Morgan McSweeney, admits that Labour failed to prepare for power. In other news, the Pope is a Catholic and bears relieve themselves in the woods. Plus, the popularity of the leader of the Green Party, Captain Cleavage himself, Zach Polanski, has plummeted. So has the threat of the Greens gone away? And can Nigel Farage shake off allegations of sleaze? Do you care about this £5 million donation before he re-entered politics? Are you concerned about the 5 properties? Does this matter to you? Let me know. And victory for England fans, as all pubs are told they can open until 5 a.m. for early hours World Cup football action. Congratulations to the Sun newspaper, TalkSport and Talk. We've all been gunning for this. Back of the nets. Now let's do a number on Mexico. It's coming home. And we can have a pint while it happens. Can Britain afford Burnhamism? My phone number is 03444991000. A very good friend of mine is on the phones today. The brilliant Sholape is taking your calls. Will he do a good job with the economy? Is he right that he doesn't want to cut the welfare budget? 03444991000. Text the word talk in your message to 87222. Leave us a voice note. We love a voice note. As the saying goes, let's talk. Delighted to say that Sam is pressing the buttons. Christian is our executive producer and directing our TV output, Neha. If you want to see the show, head to YouTube and search Talk, and up we pop. You'll be able to see my amazing guests and watch Dolan's Dispatch at 9 a.m. What about this Farage so-called sleaze scandal? Does it matter that a crypto billionaire gifted him £5 million? Does it matter that he's got 5 properties? Is that important? You tell me. 03444991000. Here's a voice note on that from Mick.
Morning, Mark. Great to see you on again. Mate, in relation to Farage, all the political parties and the blob and the media just keep carrying on with a smear campaign like they did with the Donald in the US. 10 years ago, he gave us Brexit. Not a single politician or political party has delivered it. So he's had to come back and he will deliver it. So no matter what they throw at him, we will be voting for Nigel Farage.
Mick, thank you for your voice note and thank you for your kind words about the show. It is fantastic to be back. Benedict Spence is an elite-level political commentator and broadcaster. James Price, another legend, former government special advisor and now broadcaster and commentator. Good morning, chaps. Welcome to Talk Breakfast. James, do you think that this is proving to be corrosive for Nigel Farage's brand? You know, the big headline, £5 million gift from a crypto billionaire before he re-entered frontline politics, and the small matter of 5 properties to his name. Does it matter?
I don't suppose it matters a huge amount to any of his supporters, because even in the worst case scenario where this was dodgy, and I don't think that it is, I think that people price this sort of stuff in. They price it in with Boris Johnson, price it in with Donald Trump as well. I think the problem comes from Reform trying to build on the base that they've already got and cannibalize more of the Conservative Party's vote. So I'm in the Cotswolds, and Reform is still not very popular here. And I think rather than it being about disagreeing with Reform's policies, which looks to me like Reform and the Tories have got a very similar policy platform now across the board, there is just that sort of nebulous idea of taste. And so anything that doesn't look very toward is something that people can use as an excuse not to have to vote for the person who might actually shake things up. I thought it was a bit weird until I heard that he got the donation before he entered Parliament again. So this was a private citizen receiving something, and as he's made the point clear, and I've seen the level of security that Farage has to have with him at all times, because you've got politicians saying, oh, he's so evil, he's so terrible, yada, yada, yada. The fact that if that money is going towards his security because the state isn't providing it sufficiently, seems like a pretty fair deal to me.
And Benedict, I don't want to be guilty of double standards, because on this show and on this platform, I was very critical of Sir Keir Starmer accepting suits and spectacles and tickets to the Arsenal from a Labour donor. So do you think that this sleaze issue is a problem for Farage?
I think James is right when he says that a lot of the people who are already signed up to the agenda have priced this in, and I think that he's also right when it says that there's a ceiling that Reform have kind of hit, and that this sort of thing might make it more difficult in the short term to crack that ceiling. But the thing is, I think, for Farage, that his biggest strength, I suppose, is time on his side, which is that if Burnham doesn't call a general election, and most people don't think he will be in power, but he will be struggling very quickly. And little things like this, yeah, they will be very unhelpful in the short term. Whether or not they should be is a separate question, but they will be up to a point. But more broadly speaking, the failure of the state to perform and the failure of the man at the helm to get it to perform matters a lot more to people than arrangements over money or second home or tax or whatever that might be. And I also think that because Reform, on the one hand, James points out that, sort of traditional Tory shire dwellers, if you like, find the idea of Reform a little bit grubby, and I can understand why that is. But on the flip side of all of this, if actually what you are is the head of an insurgent party, and that is what Reform is. It is something that's come out of right field, and it is picking up votes in all kinds of areas. Actually, one of the major things that defines Reform is, frankly, a loathing of established politics, and that's the Tories, and that's the Lib Dems, and that's Labour. If they go after him on this, it's not going to be too difficult, actually, I think, for Reform and for Farage to spin it as well, you see, Andy Burnham, he hasn't really got a popular mandate, he doesn't want to go to the country, he doesn't want to go through the democratic process, and all that it's always they, the establishment, are trying to do is find dirt for us because they're running scared of Reform. I can see how he would be able to turn it into a sort of a siege mentality, if you like, and I think a lot of people would buy it, especially, actually, if also Burnham gets in and isn't able to perform particularly well. If on the one hand you've got a man who, his big thing is that he's a bit casual and he's a bit down to earth and he likes to talk about hope and all that sort of thing, but there's no tangible benefits, and at the same time the media, which is not putting him under an awful lot of scrutiny, it must be said, is doubling down on Nigel Farage's receiving a gift whilst he wasn't an MP, and Nigel Farage accumulating property, which, again, many people do in this country, partly before he was an MP. I think that that's actually a pretty convincing yarn to spin to people, that actually there is a double standard.
And James, the genius of the Farage brand, and I spent half a day with Nigel a couple of weeks ago in an exclusive interview for the Daily Express. He's very comfortable in his own skin. He doesn't present himself, James, as an angel, as a paragon of virtue. I wonder whether there are parallels with Donald Trump, who, it's just been reported, has made $1 billion since becoming president again for the second time, and barely anyone in America cares.
Look, that's a great lesson all of itself, isn't it? Donald Trump didn't make his first billion through crypto until he was 80 years old. There's still time for the rest of us. No, I think that this stuff is...
It's all about how you sell yourself, isn't it? Sir Keir Starmer was going to be the grown-up in the room, this absolute practitioner of probity. Look how that went. Farage is like, look, mate, I'm not perfect, but I'll fix the country.
Yeah, and I think people are used to that. I think that the kind of adulation and reification that we've had of politicians has obviously been on a downward slide ever since the Profumo affair of the 1960s. And there are very few people try and act as if they're these great paragons, because so often when they do, especially with modern media, all this stuff comes out. I mean, probably there are various super injunctions we're not even allowed to talk about out there in the world, so we won't. But I do think it will also be interesting, as a total non sequitur, to see what there is that's kicking around about the incoming Prime Minister. I've heard some interesting things out there that may come along, and people are probably waiting, keeping their powder dry until he walks into number 10. But local politics does offer up some opportunities for, let's just call it nepotism, and let's see what happens on that front. But fundamentally, I think you're right about this point about Trump. People factor it in. And if Farage can yet again say, look, this guy Burnham has failed, like this guy Starmer failed, like all the Tories had failed, do you not understand yet that these two big parties are never going to do what you need to do to fix it? Let me go and smash things up. I can't do any worse than this lot, surely can I? That, I think, will be very, very compelling when, not if, Burnham fails. And if I had someone give me £5 million, I would bet it on Burnham to fail in pretty short order.
Are you bothered by the image of Nigel Farage as being sleaze-ridden? 5 properties, £5 million from a crypto billionaire. Vernon is in Staffordshire. Good morning, Vernon.
Good morning, Mark. How are you?
I'm very well. Top of the morning. Welcome to Talk Breakfast. Is this a problem for Farage?
Huge, massive, unbelievably seismic. I would suggest that within the next 6 months, Nigel will not be the leader of Reform.
Vernon, we're going to fix your line. Vernon there says this is a seismic story and it means that Nigel Farage will fall as the leader of Reform UK. We'll come back to him shortly on that. Just picking up, James, on one of your earlier points, is Nigel Farage going to have trouble winning over middle-class Conservatives?
I think as things stand, I do think that is an issue. Look, I probably count as one of those middle-class Conservatives, and I'm very sympathetic to Farage and a lot of people in the team. But you can see that that is going to be something of a dividing line. Obviously, the Conservatives are going to struggle to win those Reform supporters back, once bitten, twice shy. But I think that this is why there are some of us who want to see more warm words about the idea of some kind of, if not formal coalition, then an understanding. Because the Tories are not going to get anywhere near any of those red wall seats, not anywhere near a lot of those places that Reform are winning. But there is a sort of stubborn strength of the Tory brand still in probably the places that Andy Burnham hates, and is going to soak with taxes in the South. And actually, if that works out, there might be some kind of way that some kind of informal agreement can work to our electoral advantage on the right and kick these awful socialists out.
Briefly, James, before I get back to Vernon, we fixed the line. Clearly, the Conservatives have gained some momentum under the leadership of Kemi Badenoch. I suspect that will continue in the next 2 to 3 years. Therefore, the vote on the right, it remains split. It will be split, won't it, as you've just intimated. Can we pretty much still bet the house that Reform will be the biggest of the two right-wing parties, numbers-wise, at the next election?
It's $1 million question, the $5 million question. I think that's probably true, because I think, again, the Conservative brand is so both tarnished or largely ignored, frankly. Kemi has done a much better job recently, but that whole first year of her disappearing is what gave Reform so much ability to come back in the first place. I think it all goes to how badly Burnham is going to do and how cheesed off people are and how prophetic either Farage or Badenoch are in highlighting the areas in which he's going to fail. I suppose one thing is we might talk about that Burnham, all these pledges that he's making requires more money, and we're already borrowing so much money and taxes are already so high. There are only a few places you can have that tax fall. I think he'll be falling on slightly better off people, tend to vote Conservative, and so that vote will be more galvanised as time goes on and as the economy gets worse.
Interesting. Vernon's in Staffordshire. We're back. We've improved the line. Vernon, you think that the donation to Nigel Farage of £5 million before the election, the existence of 5 properties in his name or that of his partner, is going to be a problem for him?
I think it's seismic, Mark. I think it's beyond what James is saying. Good orator that he is, he's got this completely wrong. I don't believe Nigel will be leader in the next 6 months. He'll be gone. He's a bit of a snake oil salesman, is Nigel Farage. I'm a big fan of his. He's dealt with this terribly. All he had to do was come out and say, the government will not provide my security. A friend of mine has given me the money to provide security, but he avoided scrutiny for 2 or 3 weeks. He then came out and said, oh, I can buy Ferraris with this money if I want to. Bad look, bad vibes. It's terrible, and he'll be gone soon.
And Vernon, you say that as a supporter of Reform UK, is that right?
I'm a supporter of Nigel Farage.
Whoa.
Yes.
So you like Nigel, and you think he's got 6 months because of this, that this problem won't go away?
He may have weeks.
And Vernon, how does that make you feel? I mean, if Nigel goes, there's no reform, is there?
No, for me, no, I've always been a lifelong Tory, and Kemi is a million miles ahead of everybody as far as from a political standpoint. And actually, the Tories are gaining traction. She's got 3 years. I think the girl will do it. The optics are all wrong.
Vernon, are you not a secret agent for the Conservatives here, pretending to be a Nigel fan, calling time on his career?
No, I'm a regular to you, Mark, and I'm quite opinionated, to say the least. And ultimately...
And you're consistent?
Yeah, I just think that Nigel's a great guy. He's handled the situation terribly. He's proven what most people have said. He's a snake oil salesman, a glossed up banker, as it were. And ultimately, I think you'll find that he'll be gone. Richard Tice will take over. Richard, as lovely as he is getting married. He doesn't have the same appeal as a Nigel Farage. I think Reform are going to lose the market share. And I think, sadly, Kemi's the best, but Tories are toxic. And we're going to have another 5 years after this of this awful Labour government. I just don't see that there's going to be a winner.
Vernon, thank you for an incredibly compelling call and a very interesting set of points. Benedict Spence, Vernon in Staffordshire, likes Nigel Farage, backs Reform, but calls the Reform UK leader a snake oil salesman, says he's handled the 5 million donation story very, very badly. What say you?
I mean, it is a curious thing to say. I'm a big fan of this snake oil salesman. I'm a big fan of snake oil salesmen everywhere. If he is, I mean, if that's actually the thing that goes for him, well, he should be perfectly happy with Nigel Farage does step down, because there are plenty of those that are in Reform, and you'll find a few in the Conservative Party as well. There's no shortage of them. It's a tricky one, because I do actually agree with Vernon that Farage has not handled it well. If he had just stuck to that, well, it's for my personal security line, I think ultimately he would have got away with it.
And he didn't stick with it because it wasn't true?
Well, ultimately that doesn't matter. I'm afraid to say that's part of the thing that is also baked into our politics, which is if you do just sort of repeat these lines often enough, and if you just deny over and over again. I mean, for heaven's sake, that's one of the things that Donald Trump has done very well, and it's worked out very well for him. But it's not just that he, said one thing and then it turned out to be the other. It was the quite snippy way with, Vernon said, well, he said I can buy a Ferrari with it if I want. That's not actually the issue. It was the way that Farage rather aggressively started saying to people, it's none of your business. Because straight away, that actually rings alarm bells, which is much more sort of like, oh, well, what on earth could it be about then? But, I mean, as to whether or not Farage is going to be gone in 6 months, well, that's not going to happen. I don't think that Farage got back into politics to just walk away in a couple of months' time. He believes that there is going to be a general election that he's going to fight. As to whether or not, there's any possibility for the Tories, this is the thing. Badenoch is actually doing a fabulous job, given where the Tories were. And this is when it comes down to the question of whether or not there could ever be some sort of electoral pact. The thing, I think, that ultimately put the kibosh on Reform's rise and saw it dip a little bit was nothing to do with anything other than when they started letting in high-profile Tories. The Tories are so toxic that they've even proven a little bit toxic to Reform when they start letting them in. And I think that Badenoch, for all she's doing very well, I mean, we're talking a very long time until she's actually resuscitated that party, until it's actually electorally viable again, I think.
Briefly, if you can, James, could this scandal, this drama around a £5 million donation from a crypto billionaire to Nigel Farage end his political career?
No, I don't think so. I think because if it wasn't this, there would be something else that would be either conjured up or spun into something an even bigger deal. The thing is, he got a big gold bullion marketing budget that he's got coming in, he advertises for, and there'll be some other business interest here, there'll be something else there'll be some other donor that they'll find, because the way that the mainstream kind of media will keep going at this, they will find some kind of stick with which to beat Farage, because he represents, I think, a big threat to a lot of the entrenched interests. If it wasn't this, it'd be something else.
Two of my favourite men, all on one show. My thanks to James Price, former government special advisor, and Benedict Spence, political commentator and broadcaster. Gentlemen, thank you for your time. Speaking of Donald Trump, the president has posted an AI video of himself as a doctor with patients suffering from Trump derangement syndrome. It's hilarious. Take a listen.
Have you or someone you know been diagnosed with TDS? The symptoms can be relentless. Fortunately, I'm Dr. Trump, and I have a treatment plan. Let's hear what some of my patients have to say.
I have been suffering for over a decade, and after listening to Dr. Trump, I can see some results. I really thought I was a lost cause. This was going to affect me for the rest of my life. But after using the treatment plan, I can see a difference.
I really wasn't sure I could help some of these people. They were so far gone, I wasn't really sure.
I had no idea how much this was affecting my life. My work is slowed down. I'm hardly recognizable anymore.
I couldn't eat. I couldn't sleep. Constantly angry. I made everyone miserable around me.
I feel like I've aged 20 years in the last 2 years. I've been so concerned. I was really starting to worry about my future.
The treatment is simple. Turn off. Fake news. Say your prayers, and if you ever feel anxious, just have a Diet Coke like me, and you're going to see a remarkable difference in your life.
Now, let me tell you, that was AI, but it was very hilarious, and it's wonderful to see the president. Whether you love him or don't love him, it's great to see him trolling the multi-millionaire Hollywood elites. These people don't live in the real world, and they are safely insulated from the consequences of their woke, progressive, very fashionable policies. Lots more to come. What about this sleaze scandal? Is it a problem for Farage? Do you care? 0344 499 1000. Do we have Farage derangement syndrome here in the UK? And why can we not deport foreign rapists? We'll discuss that with a top lawyer next.
Welcome to Down the Local, the show that goes from pub to pub across the country, speaking to the punters about the subjects driving us all nuts at the moment.
That's Rachel Reeves, Rachel Thieves, Rachel McCown.
I don't really know Meghan Markle. I know Meghan Markle's from Suits, and that's about it.
I don't know about anyone else, and I don't know where this is going. I have 0% beers, and I feel
raising the flag, I think, is symptomatic of its desperation.
Is public transport good value for money?
No, it isn't.
You really don't like speaking to people.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Now, the incoming Prime Minister Andy Burnham has hinted at tax rises as he rules out what he calls crude welfare cuts. Here's a voice note on that from Hev.
Good morning, Mark. Hev from Kent. Yeah, this King of the North is, well, I hope he turns out to be the blinking court jester. But, I hope there's a contest. I really, really, really do hope there's a contest and he loses. But there should be a contest. He's going on as if he's already in number 10. I think it's disgraceful the way it's all been handled and how he's just waltzed in like, well, bigger than the king, if you like. Yeah, I think he's quite dangerous and I just hope he comes a cropper.
Well, I think you're onto something, Hev. I think this coronation will bite Labour on the bum at the next election. The reason being he might be a nice enough bloke. He looks good in a Marks and Spencer's suit, but the public do not feel that they chose this guy and they will take not kindly to having someone foisted upon them. We saw that with the Tories. I think it will happen with Labour too. Should Nigel Farage worry about the sleaze allegations that hang over him? This from Carol in Clacton. Good morning, Mark. I live in Clacton-on-Sea, and I couldn't care less how many properties Nigel Farage has. Some are trying to discredit him, but the thing I find absolutely disgusting is that Labour wouldn't give him the security that he absolutely needs. Carol, I agree with you on that one. If you are a politician and you're not safe, then we don't have a proper working democracy. We've got to get to more stories now. And of course, one of the key ringleaders in the Rochdale grooming gang is not able to be deported because of laws and protections dating back to the 1970s. Can this be overturned? Let's get the views of Richard Scorer, who is the head of abuse law at Slater and Gordon. Good morning, Richard.
Good morning.
Of course, this man has been found guilty of the most egregious crimes. He's about to walk free. How hard is it to get this guy out of the country?
Well, I think there are two things that have to happen, and they both can happen, actually, if we have the political will to make them happen. We have to change the law from 1971. That would have to be amended. Parliament can do that if it wants to. It could do that very quickly. And secondly, we then have to reach some agreement with Pakistan that they would take him back. So that's a political question. That's a question of using the leverage that we have. So we need both of those things to happen. But they can happen if there's the political will. I'm absolutely certain of that.
And how do you square that circle in regards to his home country, his country of birth, Pakistan, who are on record, Richard, as saying we will not take him back?
Yeah, but we have leverage with Pakistan. Of course we do. I mean, as I understand it, part of our aid budget goes to Pakistan. So that's, part of the leverage that we have. But there are multiple ways in which we can bring pressure to bear on Pakistan if we really want to. The question is whether there is the political will to do that and whether this is seen by the British state as a priority. It has to be seen as a priority. These women, one of whom I acted for some years ago, were promised that this man would be deported, and that promise, in my view, has to be honoured, and it can be honoured.
And Richard, is the law therefore an ass in your estimation in regard to this case?
Well, I think the law and legislators have been a bit of an ass, if I'm honest, because we've had 14 years in which to sort this problem out. This could have been anticipated, and I think should have been anticipated. In all this period of 14 years when he's been in jail, we knew this was going to happen. We should have been working to ensure that that commitment to the women could be honoured as soon as he came out. And now, of course, we're in the position of having to legislate on the hoof to do something which should have been done and prepared for over this 14-year period. But we've got to go ahead and do that now. We've got to make sure that it happens.
Meanwhile, Richard, a court has ruled that the decision not to jail teenage boys over the rape of two girls was, and I quote, unduly lenient. Two boys who were 13 and 14 at the time of the offences walked free from Southampton Crown Court in May, despite receiving 11 rape convictions between them over several attacks in Fordingbridge in Hampshire in 2024. Why do these soft sentences happen?
Well, that's a very good question. I don't believe they should happen. And we've had a chronic problem of this. I mean, I've seen so many cases over the years of inadequate sentencing. And then, of course, we have the additional problem that people who've committed violent and sexual offences get released, of course, partway through their sentence. I actually think we're going backwards on that. We've had sentencing legislation passed this year which actually reduces the time that violent and sexual offences, or many of them, violent and sexual offenders, or many of them will serve in prison. So we're going backwards on this. What we actually need is a situation where these kinds of offenders serve their full sentences. That's what victims expect, and it's what they're entitled to, I think.
Now, of course, Richard, we can condemn all criminals. It doesn't matter their skin colour, their religion, their background, or even their nationality. But is it an aggravating factor if somebody comes to this country and commits harm on a British citizen? Is that provably worse?
Well, I don't think it's necessarily an aggravating factor in law. Of course, you could have a debate about whether it should be an aggravating factor. But I think, you know, when you look at these types of crimes, the grooming gang crimes, I think everybody would have to accept that the sentencing over the years has not been adequate for it. We need longer sentences for this kind of offending. And unfortunately, as I say, we're going backwards on this. We're actually letting people out sooner rather than forcing them to serve their full sentences.
Well, most definitely, because my viewers and listeners will take the view that, you know, murderers, rapists, whoever they are, whatever their background, you know, it's egregious and it's wrong and justice must be served. But there's a political element to this, isn't there, in regard to immigration, that if people have been welcomed into the country and they've committed a crime, that somehow that should be acknowledged in the judicial process. And you've got the Home Secretary looking at this, haven't you, with a plan to deport all foreign criminals at a certain point?
Well, and I think these are perfectly legitimate points for people to raise. But what I would say is, I just think with violent and sexual offenders, we need stronger sentencing across the board. And I'm not disputing what you say about that, you know, the particular issue with people who come to this country. But I just think across the board, actually, we need stronger sentencing.
I think I tend to agree with you. And finally, brilliant to have you on the show, Richard. Thank you for your valuable time. We have the news that Henry Novak's killer is going to appeal his sentence. He's going to seek to have it quashed. Is this the price we pay for justice, allowing someone like that to appeal their sentence?
Look, I think any legal system, any proper legal system is going to have some kind of appeal mechanism, but just because he's appealing doesn't mean that appeal is going to be successful. And I think lots of people who are convicted of serious offences, including murder and serious sexual offences, try to appeal, and ultimately those appeals are unsuccessful. So I don't think people should necessarily take it from this that he would get a reduced sentence.
You mentioned political will in regard to Shabir Ahmed, one of the ringleaders of the Rochdale grooming gangs. Do you think he will be deported? Do you think that's likely to happen? Because it appears the political will is there, Richard. We've got Andy Burnham, who's going to be our next Prime Minister, saying he's going to be looking at this very closely.
The problem with politicians, and I've seen this over the years, is that you know, when there's an amount of outrage, you know, public outrage about something, then they will say we're going to do X or we're going to do Y, and then they wait for the outrage to die down and for the issue to dissipate, and then they don't do anything. And we've got to get this issue properly addressed, and I hope that the public pressure will continue, because I think only with public pressure and on programmes like yours and others will we get to the right outcome on this, but we need to keep the pressure up.
Richard, a privilege to have you on the show. Thank you so much for joining us. Richard Scorer is the head of abuse law at Slater and Gordon, a man that's done so much for so many victims. Nigel Farage received a donation from a crypto billionaire of £5 million before he re-entered frontline politics. And there is a small matter of 5 properties in his name or that of his partner. Does it matter? Is this a problem for Farage? Do you care? I want to know. 0344 499 1000. Here's a voice note on that from Tony.
Good morning, Mark. It's Tony from Worcester. With regards to your question on despicable, dodgy old Nigel Farage, I suppose you've got to ask yourself, would you prefer a politician that's received a private £5 million donation, which he's using for his own security? Or would you prefer a politician that quite happily turns a blind eye to 250,000 vulnerable young white girls being groomed, raped. They're quite content with illegal migration flooding the country, wasting billions on housing these people, feeding these people, not deporting any of these people, taxing us into oblivion, telling us that, you know, flying the flag is divisive. I guess you've got to ask yourself, what do you want? What do you want to live with? What do you prefer?
Tony, what a brilliant voice note. Thank you for putting it into perspective. Well, Donald Trump is a man, it's priced in that he's no angel. And in the region of 60 or 70 million Americans voted for a man that they knew was no angel, but what they were concerned about was not his bank balance or his legal history or his personality or his late night posts on X. What they cared about was inflation and unemployment and energy costs and filling up the car with gas and all the rest of it. And that's why he won. And I suspect that old Farage will shake this off and we will all move on. But what do you think? Does it matter? 0344 499 1000. More to come, 7:38. This is Talk Breakfast.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, it appears that Sir Keir Starmer has basically created a landmine for incoming Prime Minister Andy Burnham when it comes to defence spending, upwards of £5 billion of a black hole. And this was picked up by the Leader of the Opposition, Kemi Badenoch, at PMQs yesterday. Take a listen.
3 weeks ago, the Defence Secretary resigned, saying, I am being forced to make decisions that would increase the risk to personnel on operations and could make the country less safe. Since that letter, the Prime Minister has only increased spending by 0.01%. We can count, the generals can count, the Kremlin can count. His plan doesn't add up. How can the Prime Minister possibly stand there and say that this is enough?
This is the most significant upgrade in defence spending since the 1980s. The Chief of Defence Staff has been clear that the plan accelerates the transformation we need for our armed forces. The First Sea Lord, it funds the capability we need to fight and win. The Chief Air Staff strengthens our contribution to NATO, and she must have missed that yesterday the Secretary-General of NATO welcomed the plan.
Well, there you go, clashing their antlers in regard to military spending. Sean Bell is a former fighter pilot and now military analyst. Good morning, Sean.
Good morning, Mark. How are you this morning?
I'm very well. Lovely to have you on the programme. How much of a headache does Andy Burnham face when it comes to defence spending when he enters number 10?
Yeah, I mean, as you know, I tend to try and swim firmly in the military swim lane. And of course, once you get into the numbers game, you're into politics. What has been interesting as a military guy is the front pages have been dominated by the money side. I'm a warrior of old, grey hair. I've been in the military a long time. This is the first time I've ever seen such a significant move up in terms of budgets. And therefore, I think one of the challenges for defence is working out how to use this in the most effective manner. The one thing I would say about the money is that it's next week, I think it's the 7th and 8th of this month, there's a big NATO conference out in Ankara when all of the leaders of countries will get together. And at the time, there is a clear pledge to go to 3% by 2030 and 3.5% by 2035. This current plan doesn't do that. And it'll be really interesting, therefore, to see exactly how Sir Keir Starmer manages that, because the UK used to be the sort of right-hand man, as it were, of America as part of NATO, bridging the gap both geographically and politically between America and Europe, whereas now we've been steadily falling down those league tables, and that, I think, would be quite damaging, and therefore there could be some significant repercussions come that Ankara conference next week.
Well, the issue we've got is a very aggressive Russia, a resurgent China, many international bad actors, which, you know, is a threat to our national security, all in different forms. You've got terror, you've got espionage, you've obviously got, you know, cyber crime as well. This is a very dangerous world, and we're going to have to pay to protect ourselves.
Mark, you're absolutely right. And I think part of the challenge that, as you said, the incoming Prime Minister, if it is Andy Burnham, will face is that ultimately politicians, their number one priority is to get re-elected. And therefore, they only do things that the public want them to do. Now, defence is not. It should be the number one priority of the nation. But actually, for people on the streets, they don't feel the heat of Russia's invasion. Nothing like when I go through Poland on the way to Ukraine. You know, Poland, for all sorts of reasons of history and geography, they feel that incredible, and therefore they are spending a lot more money. It's quite difficult for, I think, some of the politicians in our military to make it clear to the people of this country, do you prefer to fund warfare over welfare? And the challenge, of course, literally only in the last few days, we've been hearing about Russian surveillance. Now, the Russians have been constantly flying towards our airspace. They've been floating ships around us, spying, submarines threatening our infrastructure. And now we're hearing there's a whole load of drones that have been launched from some of these Shadow Fleet vessels that have also been probing our defences, watching over our nuclear capability and the like. And many of your viewers and listeners will have remembered the spider's web that Ukraine did by attacking Russian bomber fleet, popping these drones out of big articulated storage vessels. And that's exactly what Russia's doing, using its Black Fleet, in its Shadow Fleets of vessels. You know, apparently 144 incidents. These threats are real. They are happening around our country on a daily basis. Russia is not doing this just to be inquisitive. It's doing reconnaissance, it's testing our defences. They are the threat at the moment, and we need to wake up and start smelling the coffee.
And briefly, if you can, Sean, I think maybe we need to get away from this percentage of GDP, because that's a meaningless figure if you've got a shrinking economy. I think military spending last calendar year, something in the region of 61, 62 billion pounds, which won't even touch the sides. We should be aiming for 100 billion plus, shouldn't we?
I think you're right. The challenge, of course, is that there is a balance here. Even if you turn the tap on today and put 100 billion into defence, the defence industry isn't actually ready to consume that money. One of the big shifts that they've announced on this defence investment plan is a shift to autonomy. Autonomous vehicles, uncrewed vehicles, whether it's air, land or maritime. That is a big shift. It saves money, but it will be increased effectiveness if, and there's a big if the technology is ready. Many of your viewers will have seen these Chinese drone shows, light shows that look fantastic until somebody flicks a switch and they all fall out of the sky. We have to make sure that we have a robust military capability. You have to fund it. That's why the Defence Investment Plan is so important.
Sean, let me thank you on behalf of my viewers and listeners for your service to this country, and thank you for joining us on Talk Breakfast. I really look forward to our next on-air encounter. Sean Bell is a former fighter pilot and now military analyst. What an interesting conversation. Forget about 60 billion, 62. Go 100. Seriously. because we face an existential threat. And it was Churchill who was labelled a warmonger in the late 1920s and early 30s when he argued in the House of Commons for more rearmament. Of course, he won the argument and a war to boot. Why can't we deport foreign rapists? Here is a voice note from Jay.
Morning, Mark. Fantastic show as always. Regarding the guy who's been released, the paedophile, let's just look at it this way. Do you remember the guy who got let out of custody a bit earlier than he should? Well, he was deported, special measures, deported very quick because of the threat level and danger of him, etc. Now, if they can make it happen for him, they can make it happen for this guy. I'll tell you that now.
Jay, thank you for that. Lots more to come. You're listening to Talk Breakfast. Can Britain afford Burnhamism? 0344 499 1000 748. Don't go anywhere.
Let's get to the calls now. And Kevin is in Basingstoke. Morning, Kevin. Kevin, what do you think of this cycling conversation?
Well, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to...
Disagree with me.
Yeah. I mean, there's far more accidents caused by cars than bikes.
Yeah, we're not talking about cars, Kevin. We're talking about bikes.
I'm never talking about bikes, but if we encourage more bikes, then there'll be less accidents. More people...
yeah, more people on bikes who are not being controlled by anything.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Can Nigel Farage shake off allegations of sleaze? 7:52. This is Talk Breakfast. Do you care if he can fix the problems facing the country? Here's Elaine with a voice note.
Morning, Mark. Elaine from Bournemouth.
All this about Nigel Farage and his donations, they all get donations. I mean, look at Starmer's donations. Yeah, he has to pay a lot on security, far more than anyone else. I trust him. I've been following him for a very long time. You know, before the days of voting in the EU, I've been following him. I know him well. I mean, yeah, it's policies I go for, not the money. I don't care what money he's got. It doesn't matter to me.
Well, thank you for that, Elaine. Keep those coming. Does it matter? Is it important? I mean, I think we can ask these questions, but I don't know whether that should be the focus. I wonder whether the focus should be illegal immigration, which is costing us billions and making our society more divided and dangerous. I think we should look at net zero, which is giving us the highest energy costs in the Western world, and it ain't going to save the planet. I think we should be looking at the cult of welfarism, where now the cost of welfare is higher than the tax take of the country. I'm more concerned about that than those other issues, but keep those opinions coming. The murderer of Henry Novak is segregated from other prisoners because he fears being killed in jail like Ian Huntley. Is it appropriate that he gets preferential treatment? Let's get the views of Vanessa Frake, Justice Advisor at Reform UK and a former prison governor. Good morning, Vanessa.
Morning, Mark.
Can you tell me, lovely to see you again, can you tell me, Vanessa, about the challenges of accommodating somebody like the Novak murderer in prison, given the notoriety of his crime?
Well, look, you know, anybody who commits serious crime like this guy, he is entitled to apply for Rule 45, which basically means he's segregated from the rest of the general population. You know, he'll be in a single cell, locked up 23 hours a day, and everywhere he goes, he'll be escorted by staff. That's his entitlement to apply for that. He would, if he doesn't want to go into the general population, you know, that's fine. But staff can't be there 24/7. We've seen a stark increase in murders in our jails. You know, I think there's been 9 so far this year. 3, obviously quite high profile in Watkins, Ian Huntley and Byrne. So, you know, maybe he is right to be worried.
Meanwhile, he is going to apply to have his murder conviction quashed and his sentence reduced. Is that the price we pay for justice, Vanessa?
Unfortunately, yes, he has got a right to appeal. I don't know what grounds he's appealing on. And if the appeal court thinks that he has got right to appeal, they'll let the appeal go through. That doesn't mean to say at all that he's going to get it.
Does it make a mockery? Does it make a mockery of the system, Vanessa, do you think?
Well, you know, it can do, I suppose. I suppose people think that he hasn't got the right to appeal, quite rightly. But that is our justice system as is. So, you know, in order for that to take the course of justice, he has that right. The unfortunate thing is it costs a lot of money, and he'll get that on legal aid. So you and I, as the taxpayer, will end up paying for it.
Well, that is a huge problem, isn't it? Meanwhile, we're going to have a lot of trouble deporting Shabir Ahmed, Vanessa. This is one of the ringleaders of the Rochdale grooming gang, because he has renounced his Pakistani citizenship. It's not clear that Pakistan would take him back, but the government want to deport him. Do you think that in the end we can remove this man?
I sincerely hope so. You know, why do we want this guy in our country? Why should we have this guy in our country? You know, absolutely. Get him on the next plane back to Pakistan.
Do you think, Vanessa, that it's an aggravating factor if somebody that has come to the country from overseas and does harm to a British citizen, do you think that's worse? Because we can all agree that all crime, rape, murder, you name it, it's wrong, whoever practices it. But is it worse if someone from overseas does it?
Yes, I think so. If they come here looking to live and join our society, absolutely.
Yes, and I think that's why, you know, it's interesting, isn't it? You've got Shabana Mahmood planning, hoping to change the rules so that all all people from overseas who commit crimes to be deported. Do you welcome that development?
Absolutely, I do. But it's not going to be very easy by any stretch of the imagination. You know, we have this human rights law that protects criminals, really. It doesn't protect victims at all. It is all geared to protect criminals.
Vanessa, it's been too long. Lovely to see you again. Thank you so much for joining us. What an interesting conversation. Vanessa Frake is the Justice Advisor for Reform UK and a former prison governor who backs the Home Secretary's efforts to deport all foreign criminals. I will say that if you want to be positive about this government, I think Shabana Mahmood is by a country mile the best cabinet minister and would be a far better prime minister than Burnham or Starmer, just my opinion. What about Farage? Can he shake off these allegations of sleaze? Josie is in Leicester in the East Midlands. Good morning, Josie.
Morning, I'm from Leicester. Hi.
Well, hello, Josie. Right, what do you make of all of this? Are you worried about Nigel Farage's receipt of $5 million?
Not at all. No, I don't care. He can have 50 million houses for all I care. He's the only man at the moment that can do this job. I'm sorry, will people just start, wake up, literally wake up, right? We are flooded. I mean, you want to see Leicester, it is flooded now, full of illegal migrants, illegal migrants. It's a joke. Wherever you go, you see people just luring and awful. I'm sorry, you know, I don't know what all this is about. Been hearing you since yesterday, Nigel, 5 million, Nigel. Honest to God, who cares? I don't care. I'm British Asian. I am backing him 100% all the way.
Josie, thank you for putting it out there. And I think that you speak for many people because I'm looking at the text messages and as far as you're concerned, you're more focused on inflation, the highest energy prices in the developed world. You're more focused on the societal and economic cost and national security implications of illegal immigration. You're concerned about wokery in our public institutions. What you're not worried about is Nigel Farage's bank balance. Josie, call me again soon. I enjoyed our spirited, if short, conversation. Lots more to come. Does it matter how much money Nigel Farage has got? This is Talk Breakfast.
The question my party is asking now is whether I am best placed to lead us into the next general election. I have heard the answer of my parliamentary party to that question, and I accept that answer with good grace. Every decision I've taken has been about putting the country I love first. That is why I will resign as leader of the Labour Party.
Well, you know what? In the end, he did do the right thing, and there were some achievements, and he's an honourable man, and he cared about public service. Guys, that's not what happened just now. In the last half an hour, Keir Starmer resigned, and he resigned because he was pushed. Most of his issues, most of the things which have damned him from, let's face it, within days, within weeks of him becoming Prime Minister back in July 2024, or of his own making. They were things he chose to do, cutting the winter fuel allowance, damning everybody who wanted to have a public inquiry on the grooming gangs as jumping onto the far-right bandwagon, the two-tier policing after the Southport riots. This man brought it on himself. He was not a good Prime Minister.
There was two things on that manifesto. One was a picture of Keir Starmer and the word change. Well, promise made and promise delivered in that sense. Let's be honest. But look, I mean, I don't really want to make light of it, but I am cheesed off, Julia, because what we promised in opposition was competence, and it's been anything but. I'm embarrassed. I'm really, truly, honestly, I am embarrassed because I did think we would be competent. We've not been.
I've no idea whether there'll be a contest or a coronation. But what I do know is the British public have simply had enough of political parties chopping and changing their leaders at will. We vote for somebody in a general election to be our Prime Minister. We expect them to serve their term. And barring ill health or exceptional circumstances, what is going on here, frankly, is reminiscent of a banana republic that has totally devalued the very process of general elections and democracy. We at Reform demand a general election.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Three minutes past 8. Should we do this? Top of the morning, happy Friday, one and all. Mark Dolan on Talk Breakfast. And breaking this morning, victory for England fans as all pubs are told they can open until 5 a.m. for the early hours World Cup clash with Mexico. I'll drink to that. That's a victory for Talk Sport, a victory for Talk, a victory for the Sun newspaper, and a victory for common sense. So now all you got to do, boys, is bring it home. Meanwhile, incoming Prime Minister Andy Burnham hints at tax rises as he rules out what he calls crude welfare cuts. So can Andy Burnham be trusted with the British economy? Can Britain afford Burnhamism? Meanwhile, Number 10 are urged to change the law to enable the deportation of the key ringleader in the Rochdale grooming gang as vigilantes take to the streets in anger. Meanwhile, Henry Novak's killer applies to have his murder conviction quashed and his sentence reduced. Is British justice turning into a joke? Sir Keir Starmer's former right-hand man, Morgan McSweeney, says the true bit out loud, admitting that Labour failed to prepare for power. But are they going to get worse under Andy Burnham? That's the topic of today's Dolan's Dispatch in just an hour's time. And what about this? The popularity of the leader of the Green Party, Captain Cleavage himself, Zach Polanski, has plummeted. So has the threat of the Greens gone away? Meanwhile, he received a gift of £5 million from a crypto billionaire. Can Nigel Farage shake off allegations of sleaze? Do you care? Does it matter? 0344 499 1000. Can Farage ride out the storm? Now, I can't do it without you, folks. My phone number is 0344 499 1000. Sholope is taking your calls. Text the word TALK and your message to 87222, or leave us a voice note. You can hear us on the radio, DAB+, in app and online. You can also watch us. Head to YouTube, search Talk and Up We Pop. We're on the telly, we're on the radio, we're online, we're everywhere. You can't have too much of a good thing. Mark Dolan on Talk Breakfast. By God, it's good to be back. Well, what about this story? Farage, £5 million gift from a crypto billionaire. Is it for Ferraris? Is it for his security? Does it even matter? Let's get a voice note on this from Daniel.
Hi, Mark. It's Daniel from Epsom here. How can Kemi and the Conservative Party be the answer? Just ask yourself that question. How possibly can they be the answer? They had 14 years, right? And the reason they didn't get anything done and didn't do anything was because half of a party were Lib Dems in blue ties, consocialist, centrists, weaklings that didn't want to do anything. So she hasn't got rid of those in her party. She didn't get rid of them. So from a point of trust, how on earth can she be the answer? I'll be voting Reform. I don't give a damn about someone that's given him some money outside of politics. He wasn't even an MP. I'll still be voting Reform. The Conservatives are not the answer. They can't be trusted.
Daniel, thank you for that voice note. Keep them coming. Lots of messages on the message board in regard to this. Stuart says, good morning, Mark. I'm fed up with envy politics. I want my politicians to be successful and understand how businesses work. If Farage didn't have his own wealth, then I would be worried. It's a point that Christian was making earlier. Do we want a Prime Minister that knows about business, that knows how to make money? I mean, in the United States, Donald Trump pocketed $1 billion since re-entering the White House. And let me give you a stat about Donald Trump, the bad orange man. Did you know that in the last calendar year, America has had $800 billion worth of investment, which is an all-time record? Sounds pretty good to me. Would you take $800 billion of investment in this country? I know I would. Amanda says, good morning, Mark. Regarding Nigel Farage, the vast majority of British people are not stupid. We can see the knives are out for Nigel by those who fear his popularity. However, Huey begs to differ. And let me tell you that Talk Breakfast is not an echo chamber. And if you disagree, then let me know. Huey is one of those. He says, Mark, it should matter about Farage's financial dealings. But as your calls this morning show, Farage supporters are sycophants who don't care what he does. I pity people so easily taken in by him. So what do you think about this, folks? Can Nigel Farage shake off allegations of sleaze? Who better to ask than a good friend of mine, one of my favourite humans on the planet, Anne Widdecombe. Good morning, Anne.
Good morning to you.
Now, Anne, I'm much more concerned about the threat of inflation. It could reach 6% by the end of the year. I'm concerned about illegal immigration, which is an economic, societal and national security emergency. I'm concerned about wokery in our public institutions, with judges telling lawyers to reflect on their unconscious bias when handing down a verdict. But the money seems to be an issue here around Farage. Are you concerned about these headlines?
I'm concerned only that I think there is quite a concerted campaign, which is a distraction. And, you know, we don't yet know what the committee will find. So I'm concerned to that extent. But I'm not concerned about the principle of this. This money was given to him before he became a member of Parliament. And the only time I think it really matters if money is given to a politician or to a political party, I think the only thing that really matters is if something is bought in exchange for it. And that has not happened here. The money's gone on security and whatever. It hasn't bought a change of policy. Now, you know, throughout their history, the two big parties have been accused from time to time of shifting policy in order to suit major donors. And that does actually matter. But a gift, before he even became an MP, before he could influence anything at all, no.
Are you surprised by Nigel Farage's handling of this story? Because he's one of the most gifted communicators in politics, if not the most gifted, Anne. And he seems to have rather prevaricated on what exactly he's going to do with the money. At first it was his security, then he said he hasn't spent it, then he said he can buy Ferraris. I'm a bit confused.
Yeah, I think what he's saying in all of it is that it's none of our business. And indeed, if the gift is within the rules, then it is none of our business. I think that's what he's trying to say. But I mean, I take the line that I want, as politicians in this country, people who are successful. I remember there was the most terrible uproar on one occasion when a Conservative front bencher, who was also a very, very competent lawyer, was found to have earned sort of in excess of £400,000 in legal practice. And I said, yippee, we've actually got in the House of Commons making law somebody who's so good at it that people pay in vast quantities in the real world. You know, come on, folks, we should rejoice in that.
Well, Anne, Nikki in Bristol backs you all the way. Good morning, Mark. Good morning, Anne. Nikki says, I'm sick of the endless fuss over Nigel Farage's £5 million personal gift. It's for his security after attacks and under investigation. Move on. She says, if you want sleaze, look at Labour. Starmer's donor freebies, Rayner's tax row, Mandelson Epstein links and more. Britain's broken borders, taxes, services. Nigel and reform are our only real hope for change that puts the British people first. Enough smears. Focus on the issues. Anne, is this a witch hunt against Nigel Farage?
Oh, it is certainly a very good go at trying to discredit him. Yes, that's what it is. I never object if people want to query was something within the rules. I don't object to that. But I do object very, very strongly to the personal nature of this attack. Now, Nigel is a tough character and he will just, you know, he will get through this. But many a lesser politician who comes in for this sort of thing, you know, gives up. And I think if we want quality politicians, if we want people who are capable of attracting that sort of money, if we want people who really will make a change, then it's just time to stop the petty stuff.
And you do have a deep yearning for a reform UK government. You want an overall majority. You push back on the idea of proportional representation years ago because you actually felt that reform could win an election and achieve a parliamentary majority. That's still on the table. Could this issue around the 5 million thwart Nigel Farage's ambitions? I mean, do you think this story is going to go away?
I think it will go away. I mean, I'm sad to say, I think we've probably got another 2 or 3 years before the next general election. So I think it will go away. You know, there is a limited shelf life to it. I mean, the committee will pronounce. There'll be decisions around whether or not there will be any penalty, if there is a penalty, and if it's extreme enough, whether or not there'll be a by-election. But all that will happen in a confined space of time. And I think this will go away because I think what most people want, I mean, reform is still at the top of the polls, despite all of this. What most people want is they recognise the two major parties have failed and they really want now something completely different. They want real change. And there's only one viable party offering that.
And Anne, efforts to demonise Donald Trump in the run-up to the November 2024 presidential elections didn't work, and it won't work in the UK now.
I tend to think it won't work because if it were working, then we would already have seen, you know, quite a severe impact on the polls. We haven't seen that. We're still winning council by-elections. We're still coming in second in major by-elections. I think there's no doubt at all that we are now, not officially, but we are now the effective opposition. We are the effective opposition in this country. And I think people, they yearn for change to such an extent that they will understand that Nigel will be subject to all sorts of personal attacks, so will the rest of the reform hierarchy, all sorts of personal attacks in the run-up to the next general election. Well, I think Britain will see through that.
Anne, you were a highly respected Home Office minister under a Conservative government when they were actually right-wing. We've got a Home Secretary who is pledging to deport all foreign criminals. This is the same Home Secretary in Shabana Mahmood who is seeking to double the length of time that people that have come to this country can achieve settled status. And if they wish to have that settled status, they need a command of the English language, some semblance of an income and the absence of a criminal record. She's a bloody good Home Secretary, isn't she?
I wouldn't say she's
bloody good.
I'm going to finish my sentence. You've asked me the question, presumably you want to hear the answer. I don't think
I don't need an answer. She's fantastic, isn't she?
Oh, well, in that case, we don't need an answer. You know, you'll move on.
I mean, she's nearly as good as you, Anne. Do you admire the Home Secretary?
No, and I'm trying to tell you why not.
Why not?
Shush, you silly man. Now, listen.
That's me told.
No. No, I don't think she is a particularly good Home Secretary for the simple reason that she changes too often. And she has presided over a situation, and it is firmly within her bailiwick. She's presided over a situation in which we've got record numbers of people still coming in on the small boat. She hasn't actually got to grips with the things that matter. Now, I think she talks a good show, and I would be very sad if Andy Burnham simply reversed all of that, as he might well do. But I don't want to hear talk. I want to see action.
Anne, do you fear for the country if she ceases to be Home Secretary?
Depends very much who comes in her place. But if you've got somebody in her place who, inclines towards being soft on illegal migrants, and I stress illegal migrants, and who doesn't want to tighten up the criteria for legal migration, if you've got somebody who takes that view, then no matter who it is, even if that person is a highly competent, well-respected politician, no matter who it is, it's going to be very bad for Britain.
And I think deep down you respect Shabana Mahmood. You agree with her, but you just won't say it on the radio and the television.
Well, you're entitled to your opinion. I happen to know what I think. Only two people know what I think, myself and Almighty God, and you're not Almighty God.
I'm somewhere in between. And let's have a look at Shabana Mahmood's record in office as Home Secretary. Net migration down 48%, asylum applications down 12%, deportations up 7%, and boat crossings down 37%. Labour's working.
And still the boats are coming, and still the people are arriving, and still they are not being put in detention, they're being put in the community. And if you think that the British public is impressed with that, then all I can say is go out and talk to them, because they aren't.
And we have an incoming Prime Minister in Andy Burnham who has said he doesn't want crude cuts to welfare. This is a man who previously said that we shouldn't be in hock to the bond markets, who, as you know, we rely on just to keep the lights on, frankly. We borrowed £23 billion from these Rolex-wearing financiers in May of this year. Can Britain afford Burnhamism, Anne?
Oh, I don't think Britain can afford Burnhamism. I don't think Britain can afford Labour. I mean, these days it can't afford the Tories either. So, no, I don't think it can afford Burnhamism. I don't want crude cuts to welfare, but I do want targeted cuts. I do want targeted cuts. And so to dismiss every suggestion for reducing the welfare bill as crude, I think is totally wrong, but we're going to see. I'm actually quite pleased that Britain is now seeing what this man stands for. Not cutting welfare, raising taxes. That is what we need to see, because he's been regarded as some sort of a hero for only one reason, that he's not Keir Starmer. That's the only reason he's not Keir Starmer.
Yeah.
Now it's necessary for people to see what he really does stand for, as they with Zach Polanski. Yep.
Yeah, and in your estimation, do you think that Andy Burnham is more left-wing than Keir Starmer? Do you think that the country will shift leftwards, whether it's border control, whether it's the economy, whether it's the culture wars? Do you think he's going to be more left-wing than Starmer?
Yes, I think that's a given, and I think everybody knows that, and people didn't. So, yeah, I think he will definitely be.
And that doesn't really end well, does it? Because if you look at the state of the country, notwithstanding your politics, it's quite clear that the UK requires a very healthy, substantial dose of conservatism, probably for the next 5 years minimum.
Yes, it does. It deserves some of the things that Liz Truss was trying to do, but mishandled the whole thing. He tried to do far too much at once. But the lines that she was going on, if you looked at them in a more orderly fashion, the lines that she was going on were right, which is we need more money in our pockets. Investors need to be attracted to come here, and employers need to be free to get on with whatever it is they're doing, rather than be burdened by endless law.
And always the highlight of the show when you join us. Thank you so much for your valuable time, and what an interesting conversation. Anne Widdecombe, former Home Office Minister and now broadcaster, best-selling author as well. We love having Anne on. What an interesting set of points she made. She's not having the Farage sleaze scandal. She thinks that voters are more concerned about the state of the country. What do you think? 0344 499 1000. Do you care about Nigel Farage's bank balance and his property portfolio? 8:20, this is Breakfast.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Do you care about Nigel Farage's bank balance and his property portfolio? Does it matter? Here's a voice note from Tony.
No, I couldn't care less about Nigel Farage's £5 million. I couldn't care less if he got £10 million, to be honest with you. The fact that he wants to do something that's good for the country, like get welfare under control, immigration under control, and get the country moving and growing, moving positively forward, no matter what your ethnicity is a good thing as far as I'm concerned.
Tony, thank you for that. Keep the common sense coming. What are your thoughts? Are you worried about Nigel Farage's bank balance? Will this £5 million gift before the election dog him? Will it prevent him from winning the next general election? It's all about your opinions. 0344 499 1000. So, why are we having so much trouble deporting foreign offenders, particularly individuals like the ringleader of the Rochdale grooming gang? It's a truly shocking story. Why can't this man be dealt with? He's a disgusting, barely human being. Labour is facing mounting pressure to change immigration laws immediately so that Shabir Ahmed can be deported. He was sentenced to more than 20 years in jail after being convicted of 30 child rape offences as part of the Rochdale grooming gang. On Thursday, he was released after serving 40 years. Why is he still in the country? Let's get reaction from a good friend of ours. Robert Bates is the research director at the Centre for Migration Control. Hello, Robert.
Morning, Mark. Hope you're well.
I'm very well indeed, and this is the sort of story that understandably makes my viewers and listeners incredibly angry.
Well, I can well imagine, because this is effectively the UK government throwing its hands up in the air and claiming it's impotent to remove an evil beast from our country. I think they make a strong case, or they try and make a strong case, saying that there's really little they can do in terms of the legislation. I think actually this is such a clear-cut example of an individual that should not be in the country, that they could very easily change the 1971 Act, or at the very minimum introduce a specific statute for this individual so that he can be removed. So the legislative argument against his removal really is a clear-cut one. It is something that is completely within our power. But then you get onto the practical side of things, and whether he can actually be removed to Pakistan, and whether they're going to accept his return. And that is something that successive governments have failed really to tackle countries of origin and aren't willing to take back their criminals. And we've got the Pakistan government, for instance, saying that he's renounced his Pakistani citizenship. There's a bit of a dispute over whether that's actually happened. But the simple fact of the matter is, this is an individual who is a product of Pakistan. He did have Pakistani citizenship. He might still have it. And he would be eligible for it even if he didn't have it. And I think actually if we continue to encounter obstinance from countries of origin of the very worst offenders, then it is time to start taking measures that are being thrown around, such as visa bans for all further nationals from those countries until they start to play ball. We know Pakistan has a huge illegal migrant population in Britain and are doing very little to help us with that front as well. And I think it is time, actually, I think most people would agree, that we got nasty with these countries such as Pakistan that aren't going to help us alleviate some of the ills that we do have in our society.
Most definitely, including perhaps deprive them of the generous amount of foreign aid that we donate to the country. And Robert, we need a change in the law, but I also think we need a change in the culture, don't we? Because I think we need to take the view that if you have come to the country from overseas, legally or illegally, that it's an aggravating factor if you commit crime. I think that the establishment need to view those who have come from overseas as essentially, you know, being more egregious if they commit crime, because we've welcomed them. And that was a straight answer I got from Vanessa Frake earlier, who is a Reform UK advisor on prisons. And I said, is it worse if someone from overseas commits a crime? And she said yes, which is not an answer that you'll hear from the political establishment.
Well, I didn't realise. I'm very glad to hear that. I think it's absolutely spot on. This is something that I've been calling for quite some time now, and actually, it's something that a judge in North London actually made a decision at one point. There was an illegal migrant who had committed some form of crime. I can't remember its exact nature, and he said actually the fact that you were a guest in our country does make it morally worse that you've then gone on to commit crimes. And what is the point of the law? The point of the law is to reflect moral judgments and to reflect actually breaches of a higher moral code. And I do think that if an individual is here, whether legally or illegally, and they have fallen foul of Britain's laws, they've breached an unspoken contract that they entered into upon their arrival that does make the fact that they've then gone on to inflict ills on the people of this country even worse. And I think actually that is the kind of situation we do need to be moving towards. I know it might seem a bit sort of two-tier justice, but I do think actually sort of without us being able to inflict any semblance of proper vetting and control on our borders, which we don't seem to be able to do, then we do need to, when individuals are here, make the deterrent a lot greater for those individuals and sort of dissuade them somewhat from committing these crimes. I also think it would instill a lot more confidence of the British public in the judicial system, which now, frankly, seems to be working against the people of this country, as well as the immigration system.
And what you will hear from the progressive left is that we have murderers and rapists too, and they should all be equal under the law. This is the refrain from the left. When we talk about the crimes of legal and illegal migrants, well, we hear that, you know, so many of our own British-born people commit crimes. Do you accept that equivalence?
Well, I accept that Britain has criminals, and I absolutely accept that it's awful, but I would say that there is an extra step in crimes that have been committed by foreign nationals.
The left won't acknowledge that. Because I've had, you know, progressives in the studio, and I've said, surely it's worse if someone from overseas commits a crime because we welcome them. Surely it's worse if an illegal commits a crime because they've broken the law to be here and shouldn't be here. And many on the progressive left say, no, they won't acknowledge that it's worse.
And this is unfortunately what we are up against. I mean, it is such a common sense observation that other steps have taken place prior to the committance of a crime by a foreign national that just really strike at the heart of right and wrong. And I think it's, you know, throwing the welcome mat back in our face effectively. And actually, it's also, of course, downstream of deliberate or government policy decisions as well. So there's a real aggravating nature to it. But I think, unfortunately, this is something where they know they're losing the argument on the link between migration and crime, and are therefore trying to obfuscate and throw dust in the faces of people from what should be a very clear-cut issue, and say, you know, the argument about per capita, for instance, is one that they seem to struggle with, this idea that actually certain foreign national groups do commit crime at a greater rate. They say, yes, but Brits commit more. Well, yes, we are still a predominantly British country at this point in time, so they will be committing more. But these are the kind of tactics that they do deploy in a sort of last gasp resistance against what is now a growing corpus of evidence.
Robert, more power to you for the important work you do. Robert Bates is the research director at the Centre for Migration Control. Mike is in Stoke-on-Trent. Mike, why do we struggle to deport foreign criminals?
Because we're stupid. That just about covers it. We'll let anybody in.
We're mugs, aren't we? We're mugs.
Well, we're past mugs. We're beyond it. But just two things. One, they're on about Farage. I don't care about Farage. If he does the job, like the Australians, as long as you do the job they're employed to do and they do it properly, I don't care. What I do care is that vermin that we've now got locked up. I won't call it a human being. I mean, he's given up his Pakistani citizenship. Right, he wants a right to a family life. Let's give him a right to a family life. Do it in your country, not mine. I have a granddaughter, she's 10, and I fear for what's coming down the line. I'm sorry, enough is enough. It is about time we had somebody in government who stood up and said, no. Due to Pakistan, what a lot of other countries have done. Right, get your airlines out of our airspace. Any visas you've got are cancelled. Any overseas aid is cancelled. And if you don't take them back, you ain't getting nothing. There are good and bad in all societies. But we need to get rid of the vermin.
And, Mike, this is a message which is falling on deaf ears within the establishment, isn't it? You know, the political establishment, woke judges, they don't get it. The civil service, Mike.
Why can't we get rid of the judges? We don't seem to be able to make them retire. There should be a mandatory retirement age. When you get to a certain age, you're gone. Because they don't listen to the people. They don't listen to the establishment. I mean, and let's be honest, we've got rid of his lordship and we've got another one from the King of the North.
I know.
And to be honest, I think Burnham is going to screw us into the ground. I really do.
Really?
And that vermin that I'm looking at on the television at the moment, to my mind, if he's stateless, simple. Stick him in a dinghy in the middle of the channel and tell him to start rowing. I couldn't care less. I want him gone.
Mike, you speak for millions. What a brilliant call. Really enjoyed our conversation. Have yourself a good Friday and we will catch up soon. Let's take a voice note on Farage. Do you care about his bank balance and his property portfolio?
Good morning, Mark, and good morning. And this is Phil. I think the lefties and the lefty supporting media have basically scored an own goal. We, the electorate, are not stupid. We can see what's going on. Now, go back to Donald Trump before he became president. The smear campaigns, the court appearances, the allegations, it was constant. And the BBC and the lefty media outlets had great pleasure in broadcasting it and ramming it down our necks. However, it all backfired, didn't it? We were watching, we were seeing, we were listening, and we saw. And now they're trying to do the same thing again, but this time it's with Nigel Farage. Well, we're not stupid. We know what they're doing. We know what they're trying to achieve. Diddly squat. It's not going to happen. It's too late. Happy sunny days.
Phil, thank you for the truth bombs, for the articulacy, the humour, and just speaking from the heart. That's what this show is all about. Whatever you think, I'm going to put it on the radio and I'm going to put it on the telly, because that's what I do. I get on the radio, the brilliant Sam, who is a touch sleep deprived because he's got so many small children, very, very fertile. But when that red light goes on, I've got the boss here, Christian. We don't need a 7-hour meeting about the show. We just get on the radio, we get on the telly, and we say what we think, and that's what you do, and that is the magic of talk. So what about this Farage thing? It's blown up this morning. It has broken the internet. Do you care about Nigel Farage's bank balance and his property portfolio? It's all about your opinions. More to come. This is Talk Breakfast.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
8:38 Talk Breakfast. Are you concerned about Nigel Farage's bank balance? I'll get to your calls and texts on that in just a moment. But welcome to more woke madness. Prosecutors are to be told they must test their decisions on charging ethnic minority suspects for unconscious bias. Stephen Parkinson, the head of the Crown Prosecution Service, is to introduce a new requirement in the code for all prosecutors that they should be mindful of the potential for bias in deciding what action to take with an ethnic suspect. He admitted his staff had felt affronted when it was suggested they were biased in their decision-making, but he said he was sure there was unconscious bias, which meant it needed to be in the forefront of people's minds when making decisions. Well, I'm very confused. Let's get some common sense on this from the brilliant Rafe Hadel-Mancu, historian, broadcaster, and FMR board member, also International Churchill Society. Good morning, Rafe.
Good morning. Great to be with you.
Really good to see you again. First of all, can you explain what unconscious bias is?
Yes, unconscious bias training is a way of making people racist. This has clearly been demonstrated time and again that people who undergo unconscious bias training feel a great deal of resentment that they're being told that they somehow harbour subliminal racist thoughts, and it actually leads to the opposite result of what's intended. And these courses are, of course, often taught by people who are steeped in DI and the nonsense ideology of critical race theory, etc. And, you know, people like Stephen Parkinson are the reason why I think it's far too premature when we start saying that woke has peaked, that we're over the end, we're through the worst of woke. I'm sorry, it is so deeply seeped into all of our institutions. It's going to be a 20 or 30-year project to fully expunge it from our culture. And the fact that you're still getting completely tone-deaf statements like this. I mean, the lack of awareness here, the lack of political instinct, or even, you know, sort of common decency is truly jaw-dropping. You know, to make such a statement now, so soon after the Henry Novak case, when we saw quite clearly that the real racism that exists in our institutions today is anti-white bias. You know, white people are around the only group really who are actively and openly discriminated against, and that's even been acknowledged by the police. You've had the Chief Constable of Greater Manchester Police saying that policing in Britain has now overreacted to combat accusations of racism. So obviously people like Stephen Parkinson, I think, need to undergo unconscious bias training.
Well, it's interesting, isn't it? Because we're seeing in the higher education sector that white working class students are being excluded from Oxbridge diversity schemes. So if we're going to kind of point the finger at unconscious bias, then perhaps the results are surprising.
Yeah, and I would go further, actually, and I would say that people like Stephen Parkinson of the CPS are themselves being racist. He's being racist because what he's doing is he's lazily lumping all ethnic minorities together when he says that black and Asian people are overrepresented amongst those who are charged by the CPS. No, they're not. Asian is a huge blanket term. Most Asians are actually underrepresented. So what we're seeing here is just another repeat of what we saw with the attempt to call the Pakistani Muslim rape gangs Asian grooming gangs. This man is, you know, he's slandering Indians, he's slandering East Asians, but, you know, the Chinese, Japanese and Koreans who are hugely underrepresented in the criminal justice system, as are Jews as well. You know, Indians and East Asians are imprisoned at a far lower rate even than white people. So why doesn't he mention that? I mean, the plain truth that he doesn't want to talk about is that there are three groups that are overrepresented: black people, Pakistanis, Bangladeshis, and people from other Muslim majority countries in the Middle East and in Africa. And that's why we can say that, you know, Stephen Parkinson is spouting nonsense. Because if you're going to apply Parkinson's logic, he's saying that his staff are being selectively racist. They're showing bias against Pakistanis and Bangladeshis, but not against Indians. I mean, that's completely absurd. India's right next door to Pakistan. I mean, the question we should be asking is, why is it that Pakistanis and Bangladeshis are overrepresented when Indians, who are geographically just next door, are not? And, you know, the answer, I think, is, as with black communities, it's culture. because it's worth noting also Pakistan and Bangladesh are Muslim countries, India is Hindu and Sikh, and that's got a lot to do with it. And within black communities, of course, we also know that there are issues with single-parent families, absent fathers. In Pakistani communities and elsewhere, they don't push academics as much as you find in India. Those are the reasons that you see these different outcomes happening, not, of course, looking at fault within your own staff.
And this focus on so-called unconscious bias can be very dangerous, can't it? Because we've got Salman Abedi, the terrorist who went to an Ariana Grande concert at the Manchester Arena, and a security guard did not step in. He thought it was unusual that a man of Middle Eastern extract with a long beard and a big backpack should be at a teenager pop concert. He didn't intervene because he didn't want to be called racist. We've seen the same with the Nottingham triple killer, who wasn't locked up in a secure mental institution because black men are overrepresented in such a setting. So it's not just a great injustice and incredibly wrong-headed, it's dangerous too to have this mentality.
Yes, we can quite clearly say now, woke kills. We have that famous term from Gad Saad's book, suicidal empathy. I mean, this is the crazy conclusion of liberal far-left progressive ideology, where you are deliberately self-harming in order to pursue some fantasy utopian ideal that clearly doesn't exist. We have the list of the top 20 nations in this country that cause the most crime, the most sexual assault. Yes, we've had the amazing situation whereby a clear, schizophrenia in the black community is, I think, at least 2 times higher than in the white community. Black men are sectioned at a far higher rate. Rather than just acknowledging that and saying, how do we deal with that situation? We say, well, we can't actually incarcerate. We can't section this person because there are too many black people in prison. And so once again, it's poor people on the streets who have to pay the price for these far-left luxury ideals and luxury beliefs. It's the same thing with stop and search. We know, of course, in London, for example, that black youth far more likely to carry knives. It obviously makes more sense to search that community at a higher rate than other communities. This is a time not for fantasy ideas of treating everyone equally, but cold, hard, serious approaches to policing.
And we just need to get rid of this allegation of racism around everything, don't we? We need to move on from it. We need Martin Luther King's dream, Rafe, of a colourblind society judged by the content of your character, not the colour of your skin. It's not what the establishment do. And, you and I have talked on many occasions about the challenges facing the country. We need to end illegal immigration. We need sensible, high-quality immigration based on the expectation of integration. We've got issues with the economy. But the other big thing that we need, Rafe, is a change in the culture of the United Kingdom within the institutions.
Yes. I keep saying, and the biggest lesson I think we can take away from the last 20 years is that Britain is a post-revolutionary society. We've had a quiet revolution. All of our institutions have been captured.
That no one voted for.
There's been a long march through the institutions. This has been a top-down elite revolution. What we're seeing now with reform, etc., is a counter-revolution. It's a grassroots revolution by the people against this revolution from our elites who have no representation. And that's why you have the great majority of the British public have no voice, because all of the means of communication are dominated by the mainstream media who are part of this rebellion. That's why we have to come onto sound places like talkTV, but places like Talk, there are too few of them around. You have to go onto YouTube podcasts. Even though we are the majority of the nation, we are acting like conspiratorial Guy Fawkes chaps who are having these surreptitious conversations in private. This is the reality of living in a post-revolutionary society.
Oh, yes, this conversation will be classed as misinformation, no doubt, by the fact-checkers at the BBC. Rafe, before we let you go, briefly, if you can, Nigel Farage, he cannot shake off this sleaze allegation, a £5 million gift from a crypto billionaire before he re-entered public life. Then the small matter of 5 properties, either in his name or that of his partner. Is this story damaging, and will it go away?
Well, what we can see here quite clearly is the establishment are closing ranks, and they are trying to do whatever they can, every tactic to undermine and destroy the chances of Nigel Farage becoming Prime Minister. That is the level of fear they have about Farage and reform, because they know the revolution is going to be reversed if we get in a genuine right-wing government. of course, we saw the same tactics employed against Trump, didn't we? With all of the Russia hoax, everything was exposed there. I have great issues with President Trump myself, but it's undeniable that there was clearly an attempt made by the uniting of the establishment institutions against him, and we're seeing precisely the same thing happening here. We need to wake up about this. As far as I'm concerned, the £5 million gift was a personal donation in recognition of the decades of work that Farage had done. You know, Christopher Harborne is a billionaire. Someone did the calculations on X. 5 million for him is about £10 for us. Still a huge amount of money, obviously. But I think we need to understand that what's happening here is an insidious attempt to deny the people the candidate that they actually want to become leader of this country.
That said, we gave Keir Starmer dog's abuse for the freebies, you know, the suits, the spectacles, and the tickets to the Arsenal. So are we not entitled to probe Farage in the same way? Is this not double standards from those on the right who were furious with Labour and are now silent on reform?
Well, my understanding, and correct me if I'm wrong, was that these happened before Farage had re-entered politics.
Yeah.
He was a private individual at that time, and that's the key distinction here. This was somebody who had not planned to return to politics and thought he was basically entering into his long time in the sun.
What about a scenario where he thought, well, no, I will be going back into politics and this 5 million is going to be very useful and I'll do this man's bidding when I become Prime Minister? Is there a worry about that?
Well, then there is an issue, and then if there was knowledge that he was going to return into politics, then I think you would be duty bound or honour bound to declare it, certainly on your register of interests. But as we say, this was something that happened before he had those thoughts and before he was going to go back in, and there was no duty or obligation to declare that.
Right, Rafe, I'm really fond of Nigel. I spent half a day with him a couple of weeks ago in an exclusive interview for the Daily Express. He's incredibly genuine. He's an authentic man. Worked with him for years. His colleagues are very fond of him. I think he's demonised in the press. Just briefly, sorry, I keep saying just briefly, but we can't get rid of you because you're an absolute legend, Rafe. But are you surprised by how Nigel has handled this? Do you think he could have been more sure-footed? Because originally it was about threats to his life and security for the duration of his time on the planet. Then he said, well, he can buy Ferraris. Then he said it's no one's business. Has he handled this well?
Well, I think in retrospect, he probably regrets that there wasn't a consistent message that was coming forward from him over all of this. He probably deeply resented the fact that he was being probed about something which he received in good faith and what he thought was an entirely legitimate and honest thing to receive. And perhaps, the Reform Party is professionalising. It does understand that it has a long way to go to get ready for government, and this might just be more evidence of the need to ensure that they are slightly more polished now, given that they are clearly facing the full scrutiny of the world's media, of the British media, and there are going to be, I'm sure, many more attempts like this to embarrass and humiliate Reform and Farage in an attempt to scuttle their chances. So yes, they do need to be prepared for further allegations like this.
Well, Rafe is now one of the fastest rising YouTube stars. You must check out his interviews and his monologues on YouTube. New Culture Forum, brilliant stuff, compelling broadcasting. Thank you, Rafe. Look forward to seeing you soon. Rafe Hadelmanku, historian and broadcaster at the New Culture Forum. More to come. In fact, your calls next. Do you care about Nigel Farage's bank balance and his property portfolio? 8:51 Talk Breakfast.
crown is facing its gravest test in decades, and the royalty from Talk is your front row seat. With royal reputations under pressure and probing questions about public trust, we unpack every twist and revelation with the biggest names in the business. From the throne room at Buckingham Palace to a mansion in Montecito, we follow every royal ripple. Never miss a moment of The Crown in crisis. Subscribe to The Royal Tea from Talk on the app or wherever you get your podcasts.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
You are listening to Talk Breakfast. It is 8:55. Are you worried about Nigel Farage's bank balance and his property portfolio? Herbie is in Harrow. Good morning, Herbie.
Good morning, Mark. What about the front bench of the Labour Party? You know, aren't they millionaires? Have they made their money? What about Tony Blair? He owns so much property and his whole family are very, very rich. So-called socialists? Oh, come off it, Mark.
What's behind this, Herbie? What's going on?
Exactly what is going on. You know, they don't like Nigel. They don't want reform to come into power or anything else like that. They really are raking up whatever they can. Mark, we are living in difficult times. We've had enough of the two-party system. We need to break it, give it a chance, and then perhaps we might all stand to have a better life.
Herbie, I've got no issues with 5 properties, some of which are in his name and that of his partner. But £5 million is a lot of money to receive from one person. Does that not raise an eyebrow?
No, if it was given for security, because remember, the government took away security by, taking away the privilege he had.
A disgrace.
Exactly. So what can a man do? His life's been threatened so many times, including his house has been firebombed, as you know. Yeah. And what can you do? You know, your life is far more important than £5 million that somebody's given to me. Thank you very much. Look, come on, Mark. Wouldn't you take £5 million somebody gave it to you? Say, oh, look, I feel sorry for you. Just take this. Thank you very much. I'd laugh all the way to the bank.
Too right. Herbie, thank you for a great call. We'll speak soon. Folks, you might have spotted by now, the 2026 World Cup is well and truly underway. And right here on Talk, we're celebrating a massive summer of football in absolute style. How do you fancy getting your hands on a whopping £26,000 in tax-free cash? Just imagine that landing straight into your bank account, whether you'd clear the bills, book a luxury holiday, or just enjoy a bit of financial breathing room. It is a life-changing amount of money. So if your bank balance could do with a serious boost this summer, here is everything you need to know.
For your chance to win, visit talk.tv/win or text TALK to 83338 by 6 p.m. on the 20th of July 2026. Texts cost £2.50 plus your standard network rate. Or send your name and number by post to Comp 1 PO Box 3190, Colchester CO2 8GP. To arrive by midnight on the 23rd of July 2026. 18 plus, UK residents only. So for your chance to win, text TALK to 83338 now. This is a network promotion. Full T's and C's at talk.tv/win.
Well, fantastic stuff. Good luck with that competition. Is it coming home? Who better to ask than Gary Stonehouse, football reporter at The Sun. Gary, great to have you on. Congratulations on The Sun's brilliant coverage of the World Cup so far. I've really enjoyed it. And also a massive victory for The Sun and Talk Sport with the news that we can go to the pub and have a pint for the game on Monday against Mexico.
Well, fantastic news. The front page today. Read all about it if you haven't already. Already 1-0 up, thanks to that. Yeah, pub's open till 5 a.m. I hope you've got your holidays in, or at least a half day on Monday, and hopefully, the lads out in Mexico can do the job for us, make it a good one.
Well, I think it's fantastic. Now, one of the challenges that we face, Gary, if I'm right about this, is the altitude at the Aztec Stadium. Tell me more about that, because that's a big challenge, isn't it?
Yeah, of course it is. I mean, Mexico's record there is incredible. I think it's only lost twice out of the last 89 games like that. Twice. I researched myself on it yesterday, and the experts are saying England just basically have to survive the first 25 minutes, get to that first hydration break, because Mexico will come flying out at us. The altitude, all of a sudden, if you do concede in that time, heads start going, you can't get your second wind, and all of a sudden things just start caving in. England have been preparing for it. I know last summer when they played Andorra I think it was in Spain, they did have special practice in tents regarding altitude, doing exercises, but still, I think it'll be a lot different when you've got that and 80,000 screaming fans being on Mexico as well.
Well, listen, I can't wait for the game, and a victory for the Sun newspaper and a victory for common sense. The pubs are going to stay open on Monday night. You can have a pint at 1 o'clock. In fact, right up until 5 a.m. I'll drink to that. More to come.
I swear by Almighty God that I will be faithful and bear true allegiance to His Majesty King Charles, his heirs and successors, according to law. So help me God.
It's happened before, but it is nonetheless still rather extraordinary that somebody who was only elected or officially sworn in as an MP less than 24 hours ago, in 3 weeks' time, is going to be running the country.
Yes, I think it is rather extraordinary. I think the issue isn't whether someone like that should automatically have to hold a general election. If Andy Burnham wants to introduce major changes to our constitution, he's talked about overhauling the House of Lords. He's also talked about overhauling our electoral system, bringing in some form of PR. I think if he wants to do any of those things, he needs a mandate from the public to do them. To try and do them without calling an election, I think, would be a constitutional outrage.
I've got an interesting tweet. There's always a tweet, Julia.
Yep.
If I can just read this out to you from Andy Burnham 3 years ago. We need to start demanding a general election at the end of this Tory leadership election. Well. That was Andy Burnham actually 4 years ago in 2022. So we're saying stick by your word, be consistent, Andy, and when you're Prime Minister, call a general election.
The battle is really on, though, for number 11. Who's going to be the Chancellor? Ed Miliband, don't forget, has played an integral key role in this coup, and it is a coup because no one apart from 25,000 good people of Makerfield have voted for this guy. Yeah. So he's played a pretty integral role in undermining Keir Starmer and Ed Miliband, aren't we speaking? He's going to want a big reward. But, he is, probably the most left-wing person in the government, and he will spook the markets.
Lou Hay, I mean, the reality is, look, she served her time. She was cast out of government. The reality is, as you said, she has been central to his campaign. She was central to his campaign in Makerfield. More broadly, she's been central to his campaign to enter Downing Street. He owes her, and she will definitely get a role. I'm not.
What do you say to the people that have texted me in their droves this morning? This is a really corny sentence, but it's true. That lawbreakers can't be lawmakers, Dan?
Yeah, I mean, but the reality is she's going to get a job. So the answer is yes, they can.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Victory for England fans, as all pubs are told they can open until 5 a.m. for the early hours World Cup clash with Mexico. I'll drink to that. Meanwhile, incoming Prime Minister Andy Burnham hints at tax rises as he rules out what he calls crude welfare cuts. So can Andy Burnham be trusted with the British economy? Can Britain afford Burnhamism? Meanwhile, Sir Keir Starmer's former right-hand man, Morgan McSweeney, says the true bit out loud, admitting Labour failed to prepare for power. And number 10 are urged to change the law to enable the deportation of the key ringleader in the Rochdale grooming gang as vigilantes take to the streets in anger. Why is it so hard to deport foreign criminals? And Nigel Farage is in the political spotlight at the moment. Can he shake off allegations of sleaze in the context of that £5 million gift from a wealthy crypto billionaire? He's got a property portfolio, reportedly 5 properties in his name and that of his partner. Is it a problem? Do you care? Will this derail the reform project? 0344 499 1000. Text the word talk in your message to 87222. Leave us a voice note. And as the saying goes, let's talk. In just a moment, one of the finest broadcasters and journalists in the country. But we'll kick off with Dolan's dispatch. Man at M&S strikes again. Don't be fooled by Andy Burnham, who may do a good line in Suits, but is now frantically stitching together a set of policies which will be a very bad fit for Britain. This is a man who may have mastered the smart casual look, and yes, he comes across as relaxed and likeable in interviews. But beneath that impressive mane of shiny black hair, and underneath the Zelensky-style wardrobe, lurks a far more radical and left-wing figure than he will have you believe. This is a man, don't forget, who's on record as saying we shouldn't be in hock to the bond markets, which is a bit awkward, given the fact that it's Rolex-wearing investors upon whose largesse we rely just to keep the lights on. This contempt for the basic rules of international finance does not bode well for his premiership. I'm deeply worried. In fact, it doesn't bode well at all, particularly given that he's said in the last 24 hours that we don't need drastic cuts to welfare. On what planet does this man live? Let's not forget, this is the medicine that our economically sick country requires for its very survival. Be clear, if this current administration do not inflict so-called drastic cuts to welfare, and plenty of other profligate departments too, it will be faceless accountants that will do so, following a financial crash in the style of Greece, but on a far grander scale. Andy Burnham is nothing more than Jeremy Corbyn in a Marks & Spencer suit. 0344 499 1000, your reaction. Delighted to welcome Annabel Denham, the senior political commentator at The Telegraph. Good morning, Annabel.
Mark.
It's abundantly clear that Britain cannot afford Burnhamism.
Well, I'm not sure Britain can afford any Labour administration, can it? And unfortunately, all signs are pointing to us having 3 more years of this, whoever is in charge. Far be it for me to disagree with you, Mark. I'm just not sure I'm able to articulate Burnhamism in the way that others have attempted to, because he has been so malleable over the years. You know, there's that hackneyed joke about him walking into a pub, that it's very hard to detect any overarching guiding philosophy with this man. And of course, that was the same problem that we had with Keir Starmer, was that he didn't appear to really have a belief system, and that meant that he was able to be buffeted by events. We had a lot of policy making by poll and opinion survey, and the result was a total disaster. Look at McSweeney's admission just today that they didn't plan for government. All they did was prepare to win. And my concern is that Andy Burnham hasn't done the deep thinking required to actually govern this country. Now, you could argue that he hasn't had a huge amount of time. About 5 minutes ago, he was a mayor up in Greater Manchester. But I think he's known for some time, as indeed have we all, that the Starmer project was going to implode and that he could be a likely successor. He's had the resources at the local authority up in Manchester to support him, not to mention teams of advisors, a very strong network of contacts that he will have built over the years. So I'm not sure there's much excuse for him failing to have prepared for power. Now, one perhaps piece of reassuring news was the fact that he has appointed James Purnell to be his chief of staff. Now, this is somebody who was with him in the Blair years, was part of the Blairite project, and is therefore considered to be more on the centre of the Labour Party. So perhaps that's a signal that he won't lurch quite so far to the left as we fear. Nevertheless, look at who it is who's helping him get into number 10. It's figures like Louise Haigh. Look at who is advising him on the economy. It's people like Miata Fanbula. These are indisputably people on the left of the Labour Party who favour things such as wealth tax. So in answer to your initial question, can we afford Burnham? Probably not, but he may get lucky, as indeed he has, just coming into a power at a time when interest rates, that pressure is starting to ease, when it looks like there might be some sort of resolution to the Iran conflict, reopening of the Strait of Hormuz. You know, our financial position is not perhaps quite as precarious as it looked a couple of months ago.
Well, Annabelle, let's take a listen to would-be Prime Minister, of course, effectively Prime Minister-elect, if you like, Andy Burnham, talking about his plans for tax if he enters Downing Street.
There is some room within that manifesto for movement on tax. So if you take business rates, for instance, I believe there is a case for higher business rates on warehouses and the major developments we see on the outskirts of our cities, so that we can cut business rates for pubs, and I've proposed a 20% cut, and lift some high street businesses out of business rates altogether. Overall, people can be certain of me, of one thing of me. Read some of the commentary. I am not indisciplined when it comes to the public finances. I've run Greater Manchester, the fastest growing city region in the country, for a decade, and you can't make it the fastest growing city region in the country, Andrew, without strong business confidence. I actually get frustrated at some of the narrative that people try to put around about me. My record says otherwise.
Annabelle, do you think that Andy Burnham is going to get found out in high office? Is he going to be out of his depth, do you think?
My primary concern in that respect, Mark, is that he doesn't seem to have a foreign policy agenda. He doesn't seem to have much experience under his belt when it comes to international affairs. And we are living through a time where all politics in Britain is geopolitics, where everything that's happening domestically is impacted by what's going on overseas, be that energy prices, be it inflation, be it the state of our armed forces. And these are all really important questions that Andy Burnham is going to have to grapple with. And all we have seen from him thus far is talk around devolution. This is all about sort of localism. It is about regional politics at a time when I think he needs to think quite a lot bigger about the more macro picture.
Well, this number 10, yeah, this number 10 of the North is window dressing, isn't it? It's cosmetic, and I find it quite patronising, Annabelle.
Well, it's all about, you know, this idea that Boris Johnson had. He wanted to level up. Keir Starmer wanted, he wanted to invest in big infrastructure projects and try and spread wealth across the UK. This is an idea which is as old as time, and no government has had an answer to, which ultimately stems from the fact that our manufacturing base has been gradually wound down. We are deindustrialising as a country. Now, you could mitigate some of that with a halfway sensible energy policy, unlike net zero, Ed Miliband's net zero fanaticism. But ultimately, no government has really identified a way of bringing back jobs and wealth and opportunity to certain regions that have been left behind in the UK. And I'm not convinced at all that Andy Burnham has the answer. Ultimately, what we're getting is one big idea, which is long term. It will take a long time for him to implement it from Andy Burnham, and that's devolution. Just as with Keir Starmer, we had those longer term infrastructure projects, both of them believing that this is some kind of silver bullet that will allow them to appear quite radical, but quite sensible. It's not going to spook the markets. But on the day-to-day, what is his response to the parlous state of the public finances, and how is he going to grapple with that?
And I think those are the two key issues that you've outlined, which is foreign policy and the economy. We are in a perilous state financially, Annabelle. Now is not the time for the so-called soft labour approach, is it?
No, certainly not. And so he's talked about business rates. Right. If you're in favour, as we all are, of restoring the high streets to their former glory, of ensuring that we don't have very high vacancy rates, then absolutely something ought to be done to ease the burdens on businesses. But I don't like the idea that he's going to clobber one set of businesses, and it will be companies that operate online in particular. I think this is quite a thinly veiled assault on big tech companies like Amazon, which of course is going to drive up prices for consumers in order that he can ease the burden on some of those high street businesses. Well, look, we both know that there are many other ways that you can help local shops. You can ensure that councils stop bringing in ridiculous parking restrictions that stop people from going into the centres of towns. We can ensure that their costs are brought down in other ways so that they're not having to pay so much to turn on the lights and heat their shops, employ staff. You see, Labour had that massive increase in employer national insurance contributions. They're intending to bring the national minimum wage for younger people in line with those who are older. So that's all adding to the costs of hiring staff and disincentivising businesses from doing so. There are many things that they could do, in addition to cutting business rates, that doesn't involve then slapping higher taxes on other companies that will have consequences I fear Andy Burnham hasn't even begun to contemplate. Now, he's clearly confirmed that he isn't intending to touch the tax triple op in the 2024 Labour manifesto. Politically, that is a very sensible move. I think were he to come in with no mandate and to immediately look at smashing that promise, it would be extremely unpopular and put him in a very precarious position politically. But he's going to have to find other ways of increasing taxes if he's going to deliver on the promises he's making, because ultimately there's little sign that he is going to do what really needs to be done, and that is drastically reducing our welfare bill.
Annabelle, lovely to have you on the show and really enjoy your journalism in the Daily Telegraph. Annabelle Denham is the senior political commentator of that brilliant newspaper. We'll catch up soon. Thank you, Annabelle. Peter is in Liverpool. Peter, is Andy Burnham all he's cracked up to be?
No, not at all. What I want to ask Andy Burnham is when he's going to appear in front of a non-selected audience or some real journalists that are going to ask the awkward questions like immigration, grooming gangs, all these things about the economy. He is deliberately dodging the issues. He came out of that first speech he made. It looked like a prisoner exiting a prison. The amount of people he had around him. He is dodging the media.
Well, I agree, because, Peter, the main flagship interview that he's given in the last week or so is to Andrew Marr, Peter. This is a man who described the new Labour government as a breath of fresh air and the grown-ups back in the room. That's not exactly a tough audience, is it?
He will only appear in front of the left. He won't take the awkward questions, the questions that the majority of people in this country want answers to. We didn't vote him in, and this guy's going to be on the same lines as Starmer. And those people that are ringing up now, having doubts in Nigel Farage, need to take a real good think about what's happening. Because if they want another 5 years of Burnham or this Labour government, socialist government, then just look at the front bench of the Labour Party. How many millionaires are on there?
Well, indeed, including the Prime Minister, who had a donor paying for his suits, his spectacles and his tickets to the Arsenal. Peter, can we defend or offer a sort of devil's advocate position to Andy Burnham and say that he's a gifted politician, he's got the common touch, he's authentic, and he's going to prioritise the North? Is that something that you would defend or be positive about?
Well, I live in the North. To be honest, I look at, Manchester, Piccadilly Gardens. Just take a look at YouTube of Manchester, Piccadilly Gardens, places like that. That's under his reign. That's what he's achieved in Manchester. And I'll tell you now, he'll do nothing on immigration. He's as soft as Starmer or any of them. He will do nothing. He'll do nothing on the grooming gangs, which I think he's already proved. No.
Burnham.
Burnham's just He's an unelected. People didn't vote for him.
And it's interesting that you say that. I agree. He's got no mandate to lead the country, of course. What do you make of him as a guy? What kind of person do you think Andy Burnham is, Peter? You've lived a life. You've been around the block a few times. How does he come across to you? What kind of guy is he? Do you think, Peter?
I think he's a left. He's fully, truly left. And anybody that opposes that, you will be. Like he's called me once before on a local radio station, because I like borders and value British life.
Yeah.
He called me a racist. That's the kind of person he is.
So you think he's like Starmer, just another one of those woke progressives that think it's far right to worry about borders?
Yeah, I think we're going to find out what he's really like. But.
Is he more left-wing than he pretends to be, Peter?
Oh, definitely. But time will prove it. I mean, the problem is that most people in the country do not have any knowledge of Andy Burnham. And, I've heard a lot of people say, oh, he comes across as this nice Evertonian, this nice person.
He's got a season ticket, hasn't he? That's what he keeps telling us.
Well, can I swap him? Can I swap Andy Burnham for Moyes?
I'd put Moisey in charge all day long. That's what leadership looks like. Peter, I really enjoyed our conversation. Please call me again soon. You spoke very well indeed. Peter in Liverpool, not having Andy Burnham, wants David Moyes to be Prime Minister. That's a great idea. Do you want to come up with your ideas for football figures that should run the country? Who would you take? Would you take Sir Alex? I mean, he could give the cabinet the hairdryer treatment, couldn't he? 03444 499 1000. Let's take a voice note on the small boats crisis from a good friend of the show, Perry.
Morning, Mark. When Labour boasts about the number of boat crossings have dropped, yeah, that may be true, but the reason it's dropped isn't because anything else, but they're using bigger boats. Yet the number of small boats will drop because they're using bigger boats. Rather than using boats that only hold 30, they're now having boats that hold 80, 90 people. So yes, the number of boat crossings has gone down, but the same amount of people are still coming over. Please, I've worked it out. Surely you must have worked it out yourself.
Yeah, as usual, Perry, it's cooking the books, isn't it? Thanks for a great voice note. More to come. It is 9:21. This is Talk Breakfast, and an important conversation about a man that would be our Prime Minister, Nigel Farage. Do you care about his bank balance and his property portfolio? We'll be speaking to a very high-profile reform supporter next. Don't go anywhere. Do you care about Farage's bank balance?
we've got some breaking news that has just come in. talkSPORT have announced a brand new partnership in a developing story. We hear they've created So Good Lager right in time for football's big summer. Just in, we're hearing that So Good Lager will be pouring pints across all O'Neill's pubs and some of the best sports pubs across the UK. With the big kickoff just around the corner, you can find out where to get your hands on a fresh pint of So Good Lager at talksport.com/lager.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
9:24 Talk Breakfast. Now, a lot of discussion about a private gift to Nigel Farage before he re-entered frontline politics. Well, it's being reported that Andy Burnham used over £16,000 of taxpayer cash to buy a flat in London whilst previously in government. Here's a voice note on that from Darren.
Morning, Mark. Great show. Darren from Bristol. Just on the Andy Burnham thing. £16,000 expenses, if I remember rightly, and that was from the public purse, whereas Nigel Farage's money came from a donor. And to be honest with you, if it didn't come from the taxpayer, what business is it of ours?
Well, let's get reaction from Isabel Oakeshott, who is Talk's international editor. Like you, Isabel, I'm more focused on illegal immigration, which is a national, economic and societal disaster. I'm more concerned about the highest energy costs in the developed world. I'm more concerned about woke judges and two-tier policing. I'm more concerned, Isabel, about the cult of welfarism and our broken economy. But can we have a look at this Nigel story and the 5 million? Is it going to go away?
Well, clearly there's a process that is midway at this point. I don't know what the time frame for that process is, but it's a matter of public knowledge that this is being looked into by some kind of standards committee or commissioner, rather, at Westminster. That can take a long time, and I imagine that until that's concluded, reforms critics will carry on banging on about this. But look, here's the reality. I understand why people are energised by this gift. I totally understand that. It is a colossal amount of money, an unimaginable amount of money. And, you know, how wouldn't we all love to be offered £5 million, no strings attached? But we're not. The rest of us are cracking on that we're all facing. And
now we're having one or two issues with Isabel's line. And I think it goes back to what I was saying in my opening remarks to Isabel, that, yes, we should probe public figures. And
do they?
Oh, there you go. She's back and forth. But, you know, we did drag Labour over the coals regarding freebie gates and the suits and the spectacles, the tickets to the Arsenal, the Taylor Swift concerts. And it's important that all public figures, including Nigel Farage, should be accountable for that. But what I suspect is going to happen is he'll be cleared of wrongdoing because, you know, I've certainly been assured that full procedure was adhered to. And in that context, it's really just politically motivated. And I think what it escapes is the big problems facing this country, which go far beyond the size of Nigel Farage's bank balance and relates to illegal immigration, relate to our broken economy, and relate to our energy policy. We've got to fix this, folks. The country's broken, and focusing on this tittle-tattle is surely not the answer. Phil's in London. Good morning, Phil.
There should be no money in politics at all, should there really?
Well, I mean, here's my question to you. You've got your challenges in life, Phil. You're trying to make a living and make something of your life. Do you care about this Nigel Farage story?
Yeah, I'm going to vote Green, but if Zach Palancy took money, I wouldn't be voting Green. Burnham shouldn't take money. Palancy shouldn't take money. The union shouldn't give any money. She's basically members should give money. If you give money, do you remember the cash for questions things years ago? The massive uproar when all the politicians were taking money, bungs, brown envelopes. Why is that so quickly forgotten? We know why they pay politicians for, to get favours. So why do we stand for it?
Yeah, I think it's a fair point, and I will say that there is an argument, for example, for the state sponsoring of political parties so that you don't have donors in the first place. But what we do know is that Nigel received this cash before he was the MP for Clacton-on-Sea. Isabel, obviously we've got this inquiry, it's being looked at the moment, but do you think now that this $5 million is going to be weaponised against Nigel Farage for the foreseeable future?
Well, what I was saying, apologies for the connection issue. What I was saying is that there are huge issues that our country faces. Nigel Farage is a wealthy man now. I don't think anyone can dispute that. Can we just allow him to get on with the job that he's trying to do, which is to save the country, rather than go on and on and on about this £5 million gift? He argues that no rules have been broken. There is an inquiry into that. And in the meantime, I don't see how it's productive for us all to keep on going on about it.
Well, I think you're right about that. Can we get to another quick story before we let you go, Isabel? And it's Lisa Nandy's department have quit the social media platform X over Elon Musk misinformation. Seems like an odd move.
I saw that and I just thought it just seemed a bit weird, really. She just seemed to be having a bit of a strop about the general tone on X. I understand that. I find it a pretty ugly forum myself, but it is the kind of primary political social media platform. And I suppose if there's things that she really objects to about it, she'd be in a position as culture secretary to change them. But I don't think I've ever read a single post on X from her that has left me any better informed than I was before. I can't remember a single thing I've ever read from her. So I don't think anyone's really going to notice, are
Well, Isabel, you've been very fair and even-handed about this, but I find this move chilling because Lisa Nandy is the culture secretary and X is a marketplace of ideas. It's essentially anyone's welcome. You can't really be cancelled now thanks to the ownership of Elon Musk, who believes in free speech. And this is the Department for Culture, Media and Sport removing themselves from this platform. I mean, that screams a lack of interest in free speech, doesn't it?
I don't know. I mean, is it that essential for...
but it's censorious, isn't it, for them to come off the platform? That's, in their way, they're trying to sort of cancel it by removing themselves.
I don't know. I don't think I'm going to miss Lisa Nandy. We don't need the government all over every social media platform.
Can come off it. Sorry to interrupt you, Isabel. She can come off it as a person, as a private individual. But to remove a Department of State from the biggest opinion platform in the world, it strikes me as a worrying development. I think it gives you a flavour of how censorious this government are.
I don't know. I mean, rather the less I hear from Lisa Nandy, the better. The less I hear from the Culture Department, the better. I want less government shouting at us from all platforms that are available. They can come on talk radio. That would be a lot better.
But it means they don't. It means they don't believe in free speech. Because what are the reasons why they're doing this? Because the platform favours abuse and misinformation. Where does this lead us, Isabel?
Well, I think the tone of political discourse is pretty awful, and I think that's
fine. Good. Let it be rough. It's the Wild West out there. Well, that's what discourse looks like, isn't it?
Why does it have to be so unpleasant the whole time?
But you wouldn't come off X, Isabel, would you?
No, but I'm not the Secretary of State for Culture and Sport. No, I mean, I agree with you. It's a bit weird. I just feel like there's so many other things for me to be cross about this morning, that Lisa Nandy no longer being on X is just failing to really wind me up that much. I don't care. I'm not interested in anything she has to say. And I'm sure that if there is something important, words will reach us via the government's chosen platform, presumably some press release that the BBC recycles.
Exactly, which I'll quite happily call misinformation. Isabel, you raise a fair point. Before we let you go, Labour is facing mounting pressure to jail... is facing mounting pressure to change immigration laws so that we can deport Shabir Ahmed, sentenced to 20 years in jail after being convicted of 30 child rape offences. We want this guy out of the country, but at the moment it's impossible.
Yeah, I mean, what we've got to do is change the law. It's as simple as that. And I think this is a really important test for Andy Burnham. The government, when it wants to change laws quickly, it can do so in less than 24 hours. We saw that during COVID, where they brought in historic, unprecedented restrictions and curbs on our civil liberties. Just at the flick of a hand, they did that. So on something that's so much more important, which is the safety of our young people, the safety of women and girls, and the proper protection of victims, and also symbolically saying this is what happens if you do this kind of thing in our country, I'm struggling to imagine a much more compelling case for urgent sittings of the House of Commons and then the House of Lords to pass whatever legislation is required. Let's just get rid of him.
Common sense, as always. Amen to that. Isabel, thank you so much for joining us. Isabel Oakeshott, Talk's international editor, who's not pulling her punches this morning. Do you care about Nigel Farage's bank account? 9:35, this is Talk Breakfast.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Queen Camilla has sparked controversy by posting a photo with the Harry Potter author J.K. Rowling, who is a gender-critical feminist. This was a photograph between the Queen and Rowling at Buckingham Palace during Pride Month. So does she have a case to answer? Let's get the views of Helen Joyce, Director of Advocacy at Sex Matters. Helen, lovely to see you again. Why is this such a controversial photograph?
I mean, it's only controversial with people who want to make it controversial. J.K. Rowling is a national treasure. Camilla is the Queen. Of course, those two people who both care a lot about getting children reading, and in the case of J.K. Rowling has done more than anyone else in history to make that happen, can meet each other and post a beautiful photograph about it. She's immensely popular, but of course there are young people, young women especially, who think that she's a bigot because she says that there are two sexes and sex can't change, and that matters for women's rights. So it's a confected controversy. I go through King's Cross all the time, and you know the model Platform 9 there? I have never seen it, not with the long queue. She is not less popular than she was. Young people like to try to pretend, or some young people like to pretend that she is.
Efforts to cancel J.K. Rowling have failed spectacularly, Helen. Are there any aspects to Rowling's remarks over the years that have been divisive or controversial? Do you think she's ever crossed a line?
I mean, she's a private individual as well as a very well-known person. She can phrase things how she likes. I mean, sometimes I would say things more strongly than her. Sometimes she would say things more strongly than me. I think her compassion comes out in a great deal of what she says, and especially in the initial essay that she wrote setting out her opinion. If you read it fairly, as most of the people who criticise her have never read it at all, let alone fairly, you can see that what she does is animated by her care and concern for vulnerable people, in particular for women who've been victimised by male violence, children, and in particular lesbians. She has a soft spot for lesbians who come under a great deal of pressure from gender ideology by men who say that they're women and specifically that they're lesbians.
Well, that's right. I mean, this is one of the underreported aspects of gender identity ideology, isn't it, Helen? Is how arguably homophobic it is, because you will have a little boy or a little girl that is non-gender conforming. In other words, the little boy is perhaps a little feminine in his persona, or a girl the opposite. Back in the day, you'd think, OK, little Johnny's playing with dolls, no problem. He may or may not go on to become gay. Now these children are being placed on a path to changing their bodies and changing their identity.
Yeah, homophobic and sexist. I mean, the ideology says that if you are girly, you are a girl, whichever sex you are. If you are boyish, you are a boy, whichever sex you are. I'm old enough to have been brought up in the time when we thought, you know, girls can dress how they like and they can go on to go to the moon or be president or whatever, you know. And the only things that one sex or the other couldn't do were just things that were basic biology, like a man can never get pregnant. Yeah, so I mean, gender nonconformity is more common in children who are going to grow up gay. So they have been targeted more than other children by this, but overall it's just super sexist.
Yeah, I mean, it's quite shocking, isn't it? And Queen Camilla has been an advocate for women who are victims of emotional abuse, domestic violence. It's one of her passion projects. And really, this infringement of women's hard-won sex-based rights is a very, very problematic issue, and therefore she's right to stand shoulder to shoulder with Rowling.
I would completely agree. And I would also say that in my experience, far fewer young people actually think that J.K. Rowling is a bigot than you would think when you read pieces. Like there was a piece in the Daily Mail yesterday talking about how, you know, only old people think this. As a youngish woman, I think 25, saying something like, literally everybody my age agrees with me. Well, the polling shows she's wrong there. Most young people, like most old people, do not agree with her. I mean, there is an age gradient, but actually, the more people know about gender ideology, the more they know about how it harms people, the more they see men stealing women's sporting achievements, rapists in women's jails and so on, the less they like it, and that is true at every age.
And J.K. Rowling has used her financial power and her platform and her fame to speak up for women's hard-won sex-based rights and for common sense and for human biology. In the absence of J.K. Rowling, this battle for common sense would not be where it is right now, would it?
I think that's completely true. I mean, she makes the news, whatever she does. Like, there isn't another person, I don't think, who could have a photograph taken with the Queen and have the days of discussion in newspapers and opinion pieces and, you know, shows like this. So she puts this back on the agenda over and over again. And at first people may think to themselves, oh, I heard something about her. Didn't she go a bit bigoted or a bit crazy? And then finally they look into it and they're like, oh my goodness, is that what's being called bigoted? But I completely agree with that. So she is absolutely our best ally in this fight. And, you know, other people are rich enough that they can cope with being cancelled, but she's the only person who really has done this, somebody at that global A-list level who has decided that she is going to use the fact that she is literally uncancelable to stand up against this idiotic ideology.
And Helen, it's difficult, isn't it? Because, as you say, people have a caricature in their mind of J.K. Rowling, partly because how she's been portrayed in the media and in other quarters. The same issue exists around the Pride flag. It's Pride Month now, and I think a lot of people that don't have the detail just think, well, this is about letting people be gay and live their lives as they wish, but that's not really what the latest incarnation of Pride is.
That's right. I mean, the original Pride flag, which is just the rainbow, was the rainbow symbol, which includes everybody. So everybody has a sexuality, everybody's included. And then they started to add elements to it. So there's a sort of chevron in it now, and it's got the trans bit. It's like a sort of a spearhead coming in and taking over the rainbow. And then there's all sorts of other bits to it too. And what it makes is a political statement and a counterfactual statement as well. It's a symbol of allegiance to the idea that somebody can change sex, that somebody who is girly is a girl and somebody who is boyish is a boy, you know, which is completely the reverse of be who you are, be free to love who you love. It's saying if you act a certain way, you should probably think of yourself as something that you aren't, and perhaps, you know, get yourself through some pretty gruesome and brutal medical treatments as well that end up with sterility, and also, by the way, start destroying women's rights. So yeah, but people don't know that. They just think, oh, it's the same as, you know, the old Pride.
It's a real problem, isn't it? The public, a lot of people just think, you know, if I support the Pride flag, I support Pride Month, corporations are doing it, I'm just being a nice person, live and let live, which is, of course, how you feel and how I feel, Helen. They don't realise the divisive ideas contained within Pride 2.0, which effectively supports the concept of biological males in female spaces, in female prisons, and participating in female sport. That's the problem with Pride 2.0.
Oh, I agree, but I really think that we are getting the message out there. I mean, we see from opinion polling like almost unprecedented shifts away from agreeing with all this.
Right.
And we have done ourselves some focus groups, and we've heard people of every age, including very young people like 18 to 24, saying things like, but why do I have a Pride Month when we have only one day for people who died for their country? And I mean, I completely agree with that. I don't feel pessimistic at all. I think that every person who knows more about this is likely to move towards our position. So it's just a question of getting the message out, and J.K. Rowling is our best help on that.
And Helen, you know, you're not left-wing or right-wing, you're not political, you're ultra-liberal, live and let live. You couldn't care less who sleeps with who else. And that's important to put it out there. This shouldn't be political. Do you think we will look back on this era in, let's say, 10, 15 years' time and we'll scratch our head? Will this war on the madness of gender identity ideology be won, do you think?
I'm hopeful, but we can't give up because, you know, my analogy for it is that it's like bindweed or some awful weed in your garden that you really have to keep on top to get rid of. If you just cut it off the top, it just grows back again. You've got to rip it out at the roots. It's in all our institutions. It's in the NHS. It's in the government. All the regulators have got captured by it. As you said, most big businesses already say it. You know, we're seeing that in the very, very, very slow response to a Supreme Court judgment that said sex means sex in equality law. And that's well over a year ago. And still government and private sector are mostly not obeying it. I think that's unprecedented that a Supreme Court judgment is being so widely ignored. So we can't let up. We have to keep going.
Helen, always a deep privilege to have you on the show. My thanks to Helen Joyce, Director of Advocacy at Sex Matters and a fantastic best-selling author on this issue. It's going to be a long battle, but it will be won in the end. But we need to keep talking about it and use this platform to do just that. Here's a voice note from Bill. Why are we having so much trouble deporting foreign paedophiles? Take a listen to this.
Good morning, Mark. It's Bill from Weybridge. Talking about foreign nationals committing crimes. They've already committed a crime by entering the country illegally and haven't been prosecuted. So if they then commit another crime, why don't we prosecute them for two crimes? One for the crime they've committed and one for illegal entry. Just a thought.
What a great point, Bill. And I think it is an aggravating factor if someone from overseas commits a crime. Just my opinion. What's yours? 9:47, more to come. This is Talk Breakfast.
current affairs, international news, letting criminals off while sending... Oi! Oi! You shut up. I'm trying to record something.
Stand by for 3 powerhouse hours of breaking news, challenging views. I don't give a flying damn about international law. I think people will viscerally reject this.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Michael, why is Keir Starmer so pleased with himself over pub extensions for the football? Due to Labour's increased employment costs, energy costs and Rayner's workers' laws, most pubs can't afford it and will remain closed. Very good point. 9:50, this is Talk Breakfast. Prince Harry has been reportedly reduced to tears as a result of being denied armed royal protection in the UK on his visit next week. Let's get reaction from Harry's biographer, Angela Levin. Good morning, Angela.
Good morning.
Well, this is a fantastic scoop from Katie Nichols at Vanity Fair. What's your reaction?
Oh, nonsense. You know, he's over 40 and he has been trying to get the 24/7 protection forever, right? So it's not a surprise he can't get it, because he can't get it yet by a company called Ravik, which looks after very well-known royals.
Yeah.
He's just doing that to try and get a bit of sort of sympathy, but I don't think he wins. Well, because it's okay for him, but it's not okay for Meghan and the 2 children, and they want to go travelling. So why should we be paying for that money? It comes out of our tax.
Is this about Harry's safety, or is there something else at play, Angela?
Well, I think that there's something else at play. I think he went to his father, contacting his father, that he would want to see him desperate. And he wants to then bring his wife and the 2 children. They haven't even said which palace they're going to go to, or thank you very much. So the people who work there and the king doesn't know what's going to happen. Now, I think that's done deliberately, because if somebody gave me an invitation to go somewhere, I would say thank you very much straight away. So this is to show the king up very badly. He's keeping on trying, and the poor little baby is crying. For goodness sake, he's a big man and he knows what to do, and it just makes people feel sorry for him. It's this sort of poor Harry day, and take no notice. It's not necessary. And Meghan will absolutely only come if she's got, loads of people looking after her and all that sort of stuff. Don't come, Meghan. Not many people want you. As for the children, they're according to their parents. But I read this and I thought it was just ridiculous.
And the Sussex's handling of this has been chaotic, hasn't it, Angela? Because, first of all, they tell the press with this operational note that they're going to be coming on the Friday and that this trip will happen 5 days, countdown to Invictus. Then Harry is told you're not getting armed royal security, at which point he casts doubt over the trip. Then he changes his mind and says, oh, just 24 hours. I mean, this is an absolute mess.
Yeah, well, it means that they get the front page of the news or the second page of the news. So they are still talking about taking attention away desperately as they can from Catherine and the King.
Who's having such a good year, Catherine?
Who has been wonderful. And you respect her and think that she's doing a great thing for the country. You know, she's outside Wimbledon and she's giving people tickets and she's, you know, talking to them. She's not trying to be somebody who, you know, you can't talk to or be friends with. She seems now very, very happy and open-minded to talk to everyone. But Meghan still thinks that she's number one woman in the world, and I'm afraid she's not.
Do you think that Meghan is watching Catherine like a hawk?
Absolutely like a hawk. Several hawks, I think, should do it. And she gets very, very cross if Catherine does something or wears something that she, you know, hasn't got. But what with Catherine climbing up 3 mountains in 24 hours, she can't do that. And I thought it's a very clever way that Catherine not only got money to give to people for what she was doing from the hospital to thank them, you know, it shows that, Meghan, that she can, anything you can do, I can do better.
Well, I think what Catherine should do now is fly over to California and go for a walk on the hills of Montecito, just to troll her sister-in-law. I mean,
I can't bear the thought of her going near her because she was so crude. She was so horrible about Catherine when she was really ill with cancer that you'd have to keep well away.
And what about Meghan's motivations in regard to this trip? Because I was talking to my producer Christian about it earlier. Christian has a theory that Meghan does not want Harry to make up with his family in England.
Absolutely. She doesn't want him to be in England. And I think maybe she's just being naughty or difficult so that he doesn't go in the end, because she wants him. Not because she adores him and thinks he's so wonderful, but actually that she can tell him what to do, and his name gives her more ability to earn money. It's very crude. But I think that she just needs him because she wants him for herself, because she's been very ghastly to him as well and treats him like a sort of a slave, really. You know, if she's coming out of a car, if he's talking to someone, she taps him on the back and he's got to go. I mean, she just doesn't treat him like most people. I wouldn't do that to my husband. He'd say, "What on earth are you doing to me? You know, don't tell me."
Wow, she treats Harry like a slave.
Yeah.
Do you feel sorry for Harry?
No, I don't, because he has been terrible. He knew what she was like. He has been with her. He dropped everybody to be with her. He let her say dreadful things about the royal family. I am sure that she read his book, because most husbands read their wives' books, some verse. And I think that she looked at the book and left all the things in, or suggested all the things to go in the book that made the royal family very upset and hurt. And I think she's just used him.
And it's interesting, the Sussexes were gifted an opportunity, weren't they, Angela, with this return to the UK? It happened, or was going to happen, with the King's blessing. Like you said, they were offered royal accommodation. It's my understanding they were offered Buckingham Palace, no less. And this is yet another reminder that with Harry and Meghan, all you get is a circus, all you get is negative headlines, all you get is chaos.
Yes, and I think it's deliberately made, because if you really wanted to go, you would thank them very much. You would make sure that everything would be all right for them to see you, and you would just be polite. But here it is just a crazy sort of mess, and you can't actually get any of them to behave properly. And I think, you know, he's crying. I honestly think how you can say that. I mean, you want to be sick, actually. I think it's so pathetic.
Crocodile tears. Angela, lovely to see you, and thank you for joining us. Fascinating conversation. My thanks to the legendary royal journalist and, of course, best-selling author of the definitive biography of Harry, Angela Levin. I think it's the last thing this country needs, is those two upstarts coming to the UK. New Prime Minister, Harry and Meghan.